Authority is a strong influence tactic. When you are perceived as an authority in something, people will acquiesce to you more. This is why we acquiesce so much to doctors, because we see them as authority, law enforcement because they've got a uniform on, financial advisors. So many people acquiesce to them because we see them as an authority. Meanwhile, like they could have graduated at last in their class. And so, but when you assert yourself as an authority in body posture, in voice, in speech, and how you present yourself, people are less likely to mess with you. So from the onset, like I had to learn this a lot in the interview room when I would interview people who were criminals, who would see me and be like, oh man, this is gonna be an easy day. Because I worried about that initially. But I controlled that from the moment I met that person. From the moment I met them, from the moment.
Break it down, what do you mean by that?
Hi, how are you? I'm Evy Poumpouras, nice to meet you. And if I wanted to throw in special agent, I freaking would. Hi, I'm Special Agent Poumpouras, nice to meet you. Come with me. Now, granted, this was an interview environment, but I set the tone. Now this person understands that she's an authority here. I established myself as an authority. And that's really, really important. So I won't be passive. Passive is no-go because that builds up and then you blow up on people. But if I'm also dealing with someone who's like, I'm sorry, a buffoon, I'm done dealing with you. I will minimize my detailing, my dealing with you. I'll deal with you via email if I have to. I'll pull back. I'll have my manager deal with you. I'm like, hey, I don't want to talk to this guy. This guy's a bozo. I know I got to work with him. Can you handle him? So I'm strategic. I don't need to handle him.
I love that. I want to go back to verbal economics. Talk to me about that, because I'm such a advocate for like words matter. The words you use for yourself and the words you use to others can signify either with yourself that you're inferior or superior, and then to others whether you feel, because like you said, right, authority. So the language that you use in order to express the authority, I assume, is extremely important. What are the things that you feel make all the difference in that situations?
So verbal economics didn't come from me. It came from one of my former colleagues, Lee, who's a great interviewer and negotiator. And he said, we talked about language, and he said he turned the coin, because we talked about how important it is the words we use, because we would be very mindful of the words we use when we would talk to people, because certain words can put people off and make them shut down, and other words can invite them in and make you appear more open and they communicate with you more. So he would call it verbal economics, meaning we live in a time where we think I have to say everything I'm thinking. Like I was mentoring this woman once. She's like, I talk really fast because I'm trying to get everything I'm thinking out of my mouth. And I'm like, why? Choose what you let out. Not every idea that pops into your head should you verbalize. Because when you do that, you're not putting weight into your words. So verbal economics means choosing your words thoughtfully. And then what you're about to say, think of it as money.
Right.
And the more powerful and impactful the words, the more money you're putting down. It's currency that you're using with another human being. And if those words you're using have currency, have weight, they're going to impact that person more. But if you're just like spewing out everything you're thinking, there is no currency there, because nothing is really truly of value. Look, it's going to happen where people and things are going to come out the wrong way or say the wrong thing. But when you can slow it down and really use this mindset of verbal economics, my words matter and they have weight, that they impact another human being in some way. And it can impact them in a positive or negative way. And it can also impact me, whether what I get from that relationship is positive or negative.
So how do you start assessing which are the high dollar bills and the low dollar bills?
It depends on the situation. Like I talk about priming a lot in the book. And priming is, you can prime people to be more open with you. And it's actually good negotiators, good people who do business. Before you do a pitch, we used to have the saying, even in the interview room, your opening line, you should always write that thing down. That should be rehearsed. You should never fly by the seat of your pants. That opening line is going to be the defining moment in how the rest of your conversation is going to go. So like priming words, hi, I'm Evy. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I can't wait to talk to you about the partnership and create an open relationship and an honest one where we can cooperate together. Now in there, I threw in priming words: open, cooperative, relationship. So I'm priming you to want to work with me to create this open environment. You can also do that with your environment as far as like having open space, letting people not feel closed in. You can prime situations and people, talking to people. Man, tables, like I could teach people who do interviews or talk to people, like, and you're solid, you have open space here, but people do negotiations and they have tables between them. Biggest 101 fundamental, never negotiate with somebody with a table between you two. I taught this interviewing thing for realtors and how to sell better. I did a speaking presentation and they work so hard to like get people to connect with them, to sell them like property and all this stuff. And then they go to sit down to do paperwork, and what do? You worked all this time to build this rapport, and the minute you sit down at that table, you just killed it. Because now it went from an informal, hey, we're buddies, to like, all right, sit down and do business. And think about moments somebody sits down and does business, what do everybody do? You straighten up, okay, we're gonna do business now. Okay, I'm gonna do my interview now. I don't want that guy or gal. I want the person before, I want my buddy.
And you have a table. I've heard you say the table and you can't actually see their body, and the whole point is to read people's body language.
Oh yeah, how can I read somebody's? Tables work as barriers.
Right.
So they are psychological barriers. There's me and then there's you. Even I teach, I have a podium. I never stand behind my podium. I come out from the podium. I walk through the aisles of my classroom because I let my students know, hey, it's not me and then you.
Right.
It's us. I'm here with you.
Are we doing dates wrong then? Because people go on dinner dates.
No, for a date, you don't know this dude, you're a guy. Like, you want to have some space between you. Like, me walking through the aisle and having a couple of feet between me is different. When you're sitting at a table, what are you talking about? 1 to 2 feet? Now on a date, like, I would be super thoughtful, especially if you don't know somebody. Like first dates, especially using apps or whatever, you really got to be mindful about who you meet. Public places, the first few dates, definitely have some space. Monitor that space, like between you and that person. Don't give personal information. Don't have them come pick you up at your home. I know I just went on a tangent with this, but I have so many people ask me about this, and I'm like, you have to be really careful. Don't trust unconditionally. Like, you don't know people.
I really like that, because if you know that you're about to put yourself under pressure, whether it's a date or whether it's a job interview or whether it's something else, having these tactics of like how far to sit from someone. Like, I think about a lot of things. I don't even think about that, or like how that would impact you. But
I think about, this is what happens. When you're under pressure, you think about who? Yourself. And that's all you're thinking about. Me, I, I'm under pressure, I'm under this. And you're not thinking about the person across from you. One of the ways I deflect pressure too for myself is I'll think about that person. I forget about me, that I'm gonna present, I'm gonna speak, I'm going on camera. And what I do is, to relieve the pressure off of me, I'm like, what does that person want? And so when I can focus on who the recipient is, I forget about myself. So that is truly another tactic. Like, I just shot something, project here, and I wanted to make sure I did a really good job when we were shooting. And I took it back to like, I'm delivering something for the viewer, something somebody's gonna see. And so that's what matters. So I took myself out of it. I'm nervous, I wanna do a good job, me, and I made it about them. What do they need to see? What do they need to hear so that it feels impactful and authentic? And that distracts me from me. But if you're presenting something, so to speak, be prepared. Like, a big part of pressure is not being prepared. And if you're prepared, that's one less thing you have to worry about. If you got on the right outfit, that's one less thing you have to worry about. If your hair and makeup are done in the way you feel confident, that's one less thing you have to worry about. So I look at it as columns. Let's say I'm nervous about something, right? I'm nervous about speaking because I'm just nervous and the pressure of speaking. So here's that column, speaking. I'm like, all right, here's where I have a struggle, but what other columns can I control? Well, I can control what I wear, so I feel good and strong. And I can control how I look, and I can control how much I prepare, and I can control my paralinguistics, my voice, my speech, my rate. So I'll check all these other boxes, where here it's like, all right, here I'm still kind of flailing a bit, but I control all these other things. Because you can go into a situation, and then again, going back to my previous career, where we would go into situations, have all these protocols in place, but in the end, I don't know how someone's going to respond or react, or if there's going to be an attack or whatever it's going to be, but I controlled all these other verticals. I'm prepared, I've got my gear on, I've got my shoes on that I need to run or fight with or whatever, my hair's pulled back, I'm confident, I got a good night's sleep, whatever I need to do, I checked all those boxes so that when something does break bad or there's pressure, I'm good here. I just got to worry about here.
I love that. God, every time I talk to you, like, the thing that always just screams so much is you just take ownership. You take ownership over your actions. You take ownership over the outcomes. And I heard you in your book talk about taking ownership over the outcome. And a lot of people I like to say, give away their power by saying, but this person advised me, this person told me to do this. And so they're giving away their ownership over the situation. But I've heard you talk about, like, no, even if other people give advice, it's on you. Talk to me about that. Have you always felt like that? How do you do that? And how do you do that and not going back to the shame thing, take ownership over it, but not shame yourself for it?
I love what you just said, because what you said is exactly right. What a lot of people do is we'll blame other people because we think we're protecting ourselves. I'm going to blame this person because I don't want it on me. But what you don't realize is in the long term, you do damage to yourself because that becomes your default. And now nothing is your fault and everything is everybody else's fault. And then nothing's going to work out for you. And you give your power away. When I blame other people, I do the exact same thing. And I came from an agency where they're like, they don't want to hear excuses. Mm-hmm. Save your excuses. So I was also groomed like, own your shit. You make a mistake, own it. You make a mistake, fix it. Nobody wants to hear it. Find out what it is, fix what it is, and then that way you can move forward and excel. You make yourself more insecure and you hit your own confidence when you do that, when you blame other people. Because you're saying all these people have control over me. Mm-hmm. I have no control over my fate or what happens. I'm the captain of my ship. So I'm gonna steer the direction it goes. And if a wave comes and it knocks me over, then I'm gonna fix my ship and steer another way.
I love that so much. So I've been, as you know, been suffering with health issues for 5 years. And for the first 3 years, I was going to all the doctors, waiting for them to fix me. But over time, I figured out what was wrong with my gut, and there was abuse on antibiotics. I was getting sick a lot. And so I was blaming the doctors. It's the doctors' fault they were giving me too many antibiotics. I shouldn't have been having too many. They were just prescribing it. And I was then going to the doctors to fix me. Then the ownership thing came in. I was like, hang on a minute. If I say that it's on them that caused this, how can I then take ownership over fixing it? But if I flip my mind and say, Lisa, this was you. The doctors didn't force antibiotics down my throat. I swallowed them myself. The doctors would say, you know, I probably shouldn't give you this many antibiotics. Never once did I say, why? Never once did I sit there with Google and go, what is the worst thing that can happen if I take too many antibiotics? And once I realized that, I was like, wow, this is all my fault. And that's amazing because now I can fix it. Now I'm not waiting for the doctors to fix me. And immediately I started going to biohacking. I got like glucose level monitors. And since then, over the last 2 years is when I've finally been able to make change.
Do you realize that, this is profound for me. Do you realize that you were taking these medications and not questioning anybody? Why? Authority.
Yeah.
A doctor gave it to you.
Yeah.
Oh, he must know. He must know. Well, if he's telling me to take it and we don't question, it's like, oh, okay, doctor, the doctor told me to do this. The doctor told me to do that. But you're choosing to put it into your body. Mm-hmm. Like we have no sense of like responsibility over ourselves. You are responsible. Like I am responsible for myself. So whatever happens to me because I choose certain things to some degree. Like I choose. Like I have a choice and like I monitor that decision. And if I choose wrong, I chose wrong. Rather than like this person, this. If I could say one of the things that, I don't want to say it's a pet peeve, but one of the things that disappoints me sometimes with folks is like when I hear excuses. And I'm like, why are you blaming everyone else for everything? Like life is being done to you. You're not doing to life. You're not experiencing life. You're not doing it. It's being done to you. Everything is being done to you. And it's so easy to get into that mindset.
Mm-hmm. Right, because a lot of the time excuses are valid, like they're valid, right? If you were to come to me and you were like, oh my God, I just got robbed. And you're like, this guy, he was like 7 foot and I didn't see him coming. And so all of these things like, you know, and let's say they robbed you. But if you had said, oh God, this is a terrible situation. In fact, I don't want to be victim blaming and I worry that I'm about to go down a whole victim blame thing.
There's actually something called victimology.
Really?
Yes.
What's victimology?
Victimology is when we look at people who have been victims of crime to see if there's certain patterns. And there's certain things that make somebody either more or less susceptible to crime, and lifestyle is one of them. And so your lifestyle can impact you. It's not about blaming. It is lifestyle choices.
How do you separate the two then?
Well, it's about assessing. So it's like if I go out and I get drunk and I'm with a friend and my friend leaves me, I can either blame my friend for leaving me if something happens to me, or I could be like, I went out, I chose to get drunk. Part of that's on me because I didn't have a proper plan in place to make sure I had the right friend, to make sure maybe I didn't go out and get drunk. Growing up, I avoided drinking. I grew up in New York, and there's a lot of bad things happening out, but I wanted to go out and be young and experience a nightlife. So I chose. I'm like, I'm going to choose to have my wits about me, but I can still go out. And so I avoided drinking because I wanted to make sure nothing happened to me. That helped me stay safe to some degree. Or, you know, working out at night. Like I've expressed this to you. I work out at night and I go running at night, but I will make an assessment. I'm like, oh man, it looks really desolate here tonight. I'm not going to go. So victimology is about looking at patterns. And then the findings in the research of victimology also show that if somebody's victim of one crime, that they potentially are victimized multiple times. So usually you're not victim once, but multiple times. And I think that's a really good thing to look at, not just when we're talking about crime or something being happened to you, but in life. So if you see that you're constantly being victimized by people, right? This person took advantage of me, then this person did this to me. So if you're constantly in that victim space, ask yourself, what am I doing to let people think that they can do this to me? There's something I am doing or not doing that lets people think that they can treat me this way, that they can take advantage of me. And then being honest with yourself to change that. One of the techniques that I was taught and that is used by a lot of actually some of the best negotiators out there is priming. Now, priming, when you think of the word priming is something that is done before to make what follows better, okay? So I'm going to do this, but how can I prime it? What can I do before to prep it so that what happens after works better for me? That is the way priming works. So if you have an important discussion, you're going to have a work meeting, maybe you're going to sit down with your team, you can think of ways to prime them to make that discussion flow better, to put everybody maybe in a good mood, to make people feel better, to make them feel warm, appreciate it. So let's say you're going to have a meeting in which you're going to tell your crew, maybe there's something you want to address, an issue, but it's a bit negative. But you want to prime them so that they're at least in a good mood when they're about to hear this maybe bad news. You can go out and you can order food, set a spread of food out for them. So you can say, hey guys, welcome, here's some food. You just prime them to think, oh my gosh, Lisa, food, you know, she's thinking of us. I so appreciate her. So now when they're sitting down and they're eating and they're feeling good about you, you can deliver that negative news. I actually use this tactic, sorry students, with my students. The first day of school, I prime them by bringing donuts and coffee to class. And so I want them to have a positive feeling of who I am, but I have rules and policies and structure in my class. So in that same way, I'm doing two things. I prime them saying, welcome, I'm happy to have you, donuts and coffee. But when I go through the syllabus, I'm going through a lot of the syllabus is this is what we're going to do, but the other part is don't do this, don't cheat, don't talk, no cell phones, a lot of that stuff. And, you know, I have this policy, I see a phone, you go home or you leave the class. But I want to deliver that in a way where it lands on them instead of them thinking, she's a bitch.
She's really freaking bossy.
She's really bossy. So you prime people before something. So that's a really simple example. There's actually this really fascinating study done by researchers. They took two groups of people and they had them unscramble words and sentences. Okay. All right? So the first group of people were given benign words that maybe don't mean anything, like thirsty, clean, private. The other group was given words that are kind of like elderly stereotypes. Old, forgetful, bingo, Florida. So you have the two groups. When the research study was over, they timed them to see how quickly or how long it took them to walk down the hall when they were leaving. The group that had the elderly stereotypes took longer to walk down the hall.
That's insane.
Because they were primed. And all they were doing was unscrambling words in a sentence, but that primed them to be slower, to behave and be more elderly. They almost took that on, and so they actually walked slower leaving, and the researchers were kind of astounded with it. But that's the power of priming. And priming can be used in a lot of different ways. So let me give you another example. Openness, creating an open environment. So right now, you and I have this openness, right? We don't have a table between us. There's nothing disconnecting us. Openness you can create in a conversation you're having with someone. So if you really want to get in deep with someone, it's an interview, maybe it's a date, maybe it's a business negotiation. One of the things we did, we never had tables between us because they were barriers and they didn't symbolize openness. And so you can create an open environment, maybe having an open space, open window. Another technique that is used, open books on the table.
Open books, interesting.
An open pitcher of water, because now you're kind of feeding me this feeling of openness. That's priming.
I had no idea about that. And you even said it puts someone in a certain mood to then be receptive to something. And I actually don't have a problem with it. Like, there are some people, and this is why I really want to talk about this, there's some people that actually feel like it's manipulating them in a way that they don't have the power. But I actually love what you're saying of like, no, it's just putting you in a certain emotional state. Do you think that there's a problem? Let's say, for instance, I see that you're priming me, right? Because I'm good friends with you now. We've spoken a lot about this sort of thing. Be like, nice, Evy, that actually worked. Some people may actually almost take offense to seeing the strategy. When you're in your kitchen, staring into the fridge, feeling peckish, and you know somewhere in the back of your mind that you really should eat a healthy, nutritious meal, ButcherBox makes it so easy to eat better with the best meats and seafood on the planet that you can actually love and trust just like I do. Now, ButcherBox is a premium meat subscription service that delivers high quality meats and seafood directly to your door, so you literally don't have to think about it. And that's why I am literally obsessed and eat ButcherBox every single day. So sign up for ButcherBox today by going to butcherbox.com/NYBBS and use coupon code NYBBS, which stands for Nurture Your Bad Bitch Soul. Use that at checkout, guys, and you can enjoy the choice of bone-in chicken thighs, top sirloin, or salmon for absolutely free in every single box for an entire year. Plus, you get $20 off. Again, that's butcherbox.com/NYBBS and use the code NYBBS during checkout.
So here's the thing, and this is where sometimes I feel like what I speak about is more about an ethos rather than tactics. These are things that you don't do to manipulate people. Can somebody try to use them? Sure, but then eventually you get caught. Like, people see through it. People see through the bullshit. They just do, or they feel it, and then eventually it backfires. This is not about manipulating people. This is about setting you up so that you understand people, understand behavior, and put them in a space where they feel comfortable and feel connected to you. If I can influence someone to go along, to not challenge me, to not be aggressive, to not push back, that's a good thing, not just for me and for them. But when you don't know how to use these techniques and you use them for manipulation, and if that is what drives you, you're not going to be very good at them. People are going to see through them. They're going to expire. So if my ethos is I want to connect with people, which I know is yours, I want to have less resistance in my life. I want to have less resistance from people. People can still say, hey, and you and I have had this, hey, Lisa, no, I don't agree with that. I don't like that. I don't want pink on my set because I just don't do pink, right? There's ways to communicate with people, but this is setting yourself up so that a person can connect with you and you can kind of sway them or get them to see your perspective. If you want to maybe say something to Tom and you want him to say yes, you're going to try to catch him in a good mood, or you're going to try to catch him in a time where he's receptive. But that's the concept behind priming. When it comes to influence, you are not trying to trick people.
Right, yes. And that's the thing, I think it ultimately comes back to intention, right? It's because even if I saw you priming me, right? Let's say you brought me food for whatever reason, and then you hit me up with something. because you're my friend and because I know who you are and I know what your intentions are, it's not I wouldn't see it as a form of manipulation. I would see it as a form of, she knows what I'm like and she knows how to put me in a good mood. Like, actually, I think I'd be like, she knows me really well. Like, I would almost see that as a connection, not a form of manipulation. But I do think some people do think of it as a manipulation.
Yes, and they're very bad at it. And you can see it and you can sense it, and you sense those people, you feel those people.
Yeah.
When you do this stuff, it's supposed to be subtle. Like, if you're overt about it and you are going in with the mindset, with the intention, I want to manipulate, trick this person, the moment you set that negative intent, everything that's going to follow that is going to be negative. Even if you succeed in the short term, right?
Yes.
That person's going to pick up on that, and they will resent you in the long term. And so now that relationship is gone. That long-term relationship is no longer there.
Yeah, so true. Oh my God. And just kind of reflecting back now on even my relationship with my husband. So as you know, Tom and I have decided to not have children, but once upon a time, I wanted a big Greek family, you know, with like the 4 or 5 children. And over time, I started to change and realize that, oh, maybe I don't want kids. And in hindsight now, looking back, I think I was priming him for a year in the sense of, like, as I was changing, I was making it very important. I was making it an important part for me to say out loud what I was loving becoming as a human, as a woman. Like, I love what I'm doing. To show him over time that this change, while it actually wasn't beneficial to him in the short term, because I stopped cooking for him, I stopped putting his clothes out for him. I literally was like, okay, you've been a kept man for the last 8 years and now you're out on your own. But over that year that kind of conversation evolved and that happened, I was very deliberate in saying what I was doing was making me happy and how much I was enjoying it and how much I loved it. So that when we started to talk about having kids and I was starting to voice I wasn't sure, he immediately, again, wasn't deliberate, but now looking back, he was already primed by being, but babe, yeah, like, don't have kids. I've seen how happy you've been over this last year. So even that, with now that I reflect back, I'm like, oh, I would do that again. And he does that to me, but it's not the manipulation. It's just showing me the true thing so that I can see. So I actually encourage him to prime me, and I encourage people to prime me or prime each other if it's in service of, God, that's going to sound really cheesy, but in service of a pure goal. And so I definitely wanted to influence him for him to be excited about the fact that I've chosen to not have children. Like, that we've chosen. But like, I really wanted him to be excited about it and not feel like he was really like, fine, I'll do it for you, right? Like, I kind of wanted him to get a glimpse into how I was feeling, how I was thinking, so that when I approached it, he was already primed with understanding where I'm coming from.
Yes. Yes, but it yielded better results for you, because otherwise, had you maybe not done some of those different things, he would have been resistant, it would have been a fight, it could have blown up, it could have led to divorce.
Correct. So true. And now, actually, you know what we do with each other? Oh my God, I love this. But what we do is sometimes now I'll say it to him because we know about the priming thing. I'll say it to him and I'm like, I'm just planting a seed. And I'll even do that with a little finger, and I'll lean forward and I'll plant it in front of him, and then I back off and he smiles. And now we do it to each other, and we actually say, like, just planting a seed, nothing for you to say, nothing for you to do, just planting a seed. And now, because we do it with a vibe and a spirit of being cute and honest and open and letting each other know that we're actually priming each other, like, it really is the most freaking beautiful thing we've ever done.
Yeah. I think it's when you use influence in a direction that helps progress the relationship or progress you.
Yes.
And if you're thoughtful about it, at the end of the day, it just helps you get closer to your goals. And I can't think of anything better than that. When somebody perceives you as an authority in something, they are more likely to be agreeable, they are more likely to cooperate with you and say yes to you. So what I do initially in the beginning, it could be considered as authority, even though it's not really my expertise, but because I wanted to set a precedence of letting somebody know, and sometimes I would interview people who they hated, you know, what I represented. They were very angry to be there. They had no respect for me. And they were very challenging. So I would want to set the tone very early on. Again, though, it is priming that I was in charge. I don't want to tell you I'm in charge. The moment those words come out, I'm in charge, I'm the boss, you need to listen to me, you're done, you're done, you're done. You've just lost all credibility, because what's that saying is they already know you are these things, but they don't care because they don't respect you, and they're challenging you. So you can keep repeating it. You're trying to use your status as a way to get people to respect you. You want people to respect you, the person, not your status. Because somebody can have status and not have any respect. But when it comes to setting things up, because I wanted to set authority that, hey, I'm in charge, I would say to somebody, hey, hi, Lisa, welcome. What can I get you to drink? And they would, if somebody says, no, I don't want anything, please, I want to get you something. What can I bring you? I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. So I've kind of pushed you and set this precedence of, I'm going to get you a drink. But you could do it like when somebody comes in, hey, how are you? Have a seat, and show them where to sit.
Love that. I want to talk to you though about the drink thing, because in that situation, I see why you are showing authority. You've walked into the room. They have no say on whether they get a drink or not unless you offer them. Here's a situation, a story that I actually just remembered. So Impact Theory is growing very quickly. We have a big celebrity come in. We've got a big team when there's big celebrities coming, so we have this shoot, everyone's there. And me, being me, Lisa, I love asking, I'm Greek. So I literally am like, oh, does anyone want a cup of tea? Does anyone want coffee? Anyone, cookies? And I'm walking around. And then something happened, and this was a while ago, so I have to remember the details, but something happened, and I was like, wow, I'm being treated like I'm like the bottom of someone's shoe. And so afterwards I said to Tom, babe, this really actually upset me. And he's like, but babe, you treat yourself like you're the waitress.
Yes.
And he's like, how do you expect someone to respect you when you're walking around like you're the waitress serving other people, not a joint partnership? And I was like, that actually is something that I struggle with, because I'm like, but why though? Why in one situation, exactly what you're saying commands authority, and in a completely other situation actually makes me feel less than? Not that a waitress is anything bad at all, I just want to state that. But I was the freaking owner of the company, and I wanted to walk in and strut my stuff. But I still wanted to be kind and sweet and generous.
But you weren't professional.
But
this is where everybody gets mixed up.
Yeah.
You're professional. Can you be kind and be professional? Yes. But it's when you become overly kind that doesn't work for you. It's called overly cooperative. That's a whole other episode. When you're overly polite, that doesn't work for you. You can be a professional, and you can come in as a professional businesswoman. Hey guys, thank you, welcome. What can I get you to drink? It's the way it is said. Now, I know you want to be authentic, and you can be like that with me. You can be like that with the people that are close to you, that know you. But if you're dealing with business people or people that you kind of don't have that, or you're trying to get to that level where you want that respect, you want to feel like an equal partner, then you carry yourself like that. So this is where you create balance. So it's polite, yes. Yeah. Overly polite, no good, right? Compassionate, yes. Overly compassionate, no good. Kind, yes. Overly kind, no good. And I hear you, because I had to scale that back too. That was a part of me. I had to understand that because of maybe my gender, because of what I look like, because of the judgments people make, that would not work for me.
And that's exactly what I said to Tom. Guarantee, babe, you walked into that same room, exactly the same situation. You turned around, you said, oh, does anyone want a cup of tea? Anyone want any biscuits? No one's going to act afterwards the way they acted towards me.
Yes, but this is where you have to know thyself and understanding. Oh my gosh, this is a whole other tactic or issue. This is called branding, which is what people see when they see you. So branding is, I don't know if branding's influence, but when you want to establish a connection with people and influence people, they have to know how to read you, but you also have to know what they see. So there's two types of brands that you have, Lisa. This is the brand one is the way Lisa sees herself. In your mind, you see Lisa a certain way. Brand two is how other people see you and the world sees you. So these two brands may not connect. So if I flip it back to me, I understood my branding was when people saw me, they saw a white Caucasian woman, a blonde-haired woman, my makeup, my dress, whatever the case may be. She's probably American. She's probably Christian. She probably grew up in middle suburban household. People would make an assessment of me based on what they saw. It's just something that people automatically do. It's the impression they make based off of the world and what they experience in the world. But my true brand, the brand that I know about myself, was I'm the daughter of immigrants. We didn't grow up poor, but we didn't grow up great. I lived in public housing because my parents couldn't afford housing. I grew up in a really rough part of town. We were victims of a lot of crime. But that's a brand of me that people don't know. I know that. And if you didn't know me, you would never expect that I started off as a New York City police officer. You would never expect that I was a special agent with the Secret Service, or that I was on the president's detail, or that I was an interrogator. People don't see that brand, although that is authentic to me. They see this brand, this woman. And so you have to you have to understand what people see. So I get when you're like, well, if Tom did that, I get it. But Tom looks a certain way, sounds a certain way, is a certain way. So if you can just let that go and think about what is my brand and what do people see or what do they think my brand is? And oftentimes what people, and you could call it stereotyping in a sense, but what truly is and what people perceive is not the same thing. So if you can understand what people see, you may not like it. You're like, why do they see that? They just see you a certain way. And so then when you come in overly nice, can I get you coffee? Can I get you coffee? Can I get you this? You're feeding into that, and now they've done is dismiss you. I want to go back to what you said, and I see this with a lot of women where they feel like no one hears me, I get steamrolled, and there's a couple of very basic things. First of all, do you speak up? Do you project your voice? Do you speak a little bit slower so that you can take time when you speak, or do you rush through it? Because when we rush through things, it sends a message that I don't matter, my words don't matter, I don't want to take up your time, that I'm not worthy. There's stuff like that. And then also think about your brand. You know, what do they see? They're going to see that. You can't change what they see, but mold it. Mold yourself. Like it's amazing. You can mold your body, you can mold your clothes, your look, you can mold it, so do it. But I think when you take that, they have to accept me as I am, but they're not, or it's not working, so now what do? You just hit a roadblock. I'm all about getting shit done. I'm going to get shit done.
Yeah. Yeah, you've really given me the words now, I think, to put to it. It's not that I'm not being authentic, it's that I'm tapping into a different side to me. Like, that really resonates. I need words like that to tell myself, because when I'm in that moment where I'm like, but Lisa, you just always want to be authentic, I need something to go to, because otherwise I'm like, what's the opposite of that? Okay, am I being fake? And I don't like that feeling, which is why I think I do lean into always be yourself, but having language like that allows me to go, okay, I'm not being fake, I'm just tapping into a different side.
Yes, the business professional side.
Yeah.
You're a businesswoman. You help co-found this amazing company. So you lean into that version of you. Because when you walk in, I'm going to be me, and everybody has to accept it, you're going to hit wall after wall after wall after wall. And now you're not progressing to get what you want. All you're doing is meeting resistance everywhere. And there's no progress. You're not in a cooperation state. People see you a certain way and they think, I don't know if I want to do business with her. She just seems like, whether you're solid or not, that's the perception they made. And so you need to off-balance that perception. Is it fair? I don't know. I'm not talking fair or not. I'm just talking about what the reality is.
Oh, dude, I'm so fucking glad you said that, because that's the thing. I used to be that person, but babe, it's not fair. But I don't understand, it's not fair. Now I'm like, screw that. What am I trying to get to? And that's why me and you get along so well, because you're no freaking BS. You're like, Lisa, no wonder people didn't respect you, because you acted like X, Y, and Z. Like, being honest, being very aware of how you're being perceived is very strong. And having someone as a friend like you even, right, that points those things out to me is very powerful, because I don't think sometimes we see how we come across.
Look, I also, to be fair, I had so much practice, and I interviewed hundreds of people in my career, and I dealt with the public. And so I had to become attuned to people. I even got my master's in forensic psychology so that I could understand people better. I didn't magically become this.
Yes.
But there's research, there's social sciences. Some of the stuff we're talking about, it's not my opinion. There is science behind this. There's research behind this. Go read it. This is not the world by Evy.
Right.
It is the things that were taught to me and taught to the top negotiators in the world, because we had to be effective. When you're negotiating with someone who wants to blow the world, you know, a city up, or attack somebody, a suicide bomber, or a criminal, when you're dealing with these life or death situations, because of that, and because of what was at stake, at least my agency really worked hard to make sure I had the tools to offset whatever personality walked into my room. You're going to get this person. I didn't walk in there, well, today I'm going to be me. You know, there's a difference between talking to a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer, and there's a difference between talking to a victim or a child. I didn't walk in there, I'm going to be me. I had to adjust and navigate. There was a case where there was a young man. He was 17 years old, and he assisted in an attempted murder case. So the murder was, they did a home invasion. They went into this man's house. They were there to steal money and other things. This was actually related to drugs. There was drugs in the home. They knew there was money in the home, so they wanted to take the money. So he and another person go in, and it doesn't go well, and they end up shooting the person at the home invasion like maybe 6 times. He lived, actually. He lived. But they leave. Now we're trying to figure out who is involved. The young man that we're supposed to interview, he is 17 years old. He is in a horrible neighborhood. He had been shot at. Actually, he was a victim himself of having been shot at and survived. He's in a sweatsuit, and you could see that he's coming from a very difficult background where he was just surrounded by crime and by drugs. And we're going in there to speak with him. You tell me what I have in common with this young man, other than my humanity. Not much. So understanding who he is and what he may see in me, right, my brand, and understanding who he is, I understand I have to create some common ground. Because we have very different backgrounds, very different lifestyles. My partner shows up to do this interview with me, and actually he was really the lead. I was just kind of there for support and just to be there. He shows up in a 3-piece suit. 3-piece suit. He's in a 3-piece suit with a tie. He's got his gun on, his badge on. And I'm like, where are we going? Are we giving a press briefing? Because you look like it. And he had his like police shield right here. And I see this and I'm thinking, how on earth are we going to have any common ground with this young man? We're just going to completely alienate him. So I asked him, I said, can I ask you a question? Would you mind? And he had known my background, so it was easy to do this. A lot of times I could never do this. I said, can you take your blazer off? Can you take your tie off? Can you get rid of your gun? Can you get rid of your badge? Can you get rid of your cuffs? Can you just look a bit more like a human being rather than a cop? And he did. To his credit, he did. And when we went in there, we were trying to connect with the young man. And of course, he's like, look, I don't know anything. And eventually, I was able to connect with him and talk. And as we're talking, you could see he's struggling. They had arrested him the night before. They were able to arrest him. They had enough to arrest him. But he was hungry. And so I asked him, are you hungry? Do you want anything to eat or to drink? He's like, you know, I would love a drink. He's like, can I have a Pepsi? I said, sure, I'll get you a Pepsi. So I stepped out to go get a Pepsi, and then I got one for my partner and one for me. And I walk in, and I give the young man his Pepsi. I give a Pepsi to the detective, and I get a Pepsi as well. And the detective looks at me. He's like, I don't drink Pepsi. And I was just like, you're drinking Pepsi today. The point was to humanize ourselves and create a common bond. And if it's something as simple as symbolic as a symbol of drinking a Pepsi together, that was that. Which means like, I drink Pepsi, you drink Pepsi, he drinks Pepsi. We do have something in common. It's very basic and simple, but it's a great way to connect with people. Again, influence. And you can do this with food. Sometimes if I'll meet with a business executive, or maybe today's typically in the TV world, and I want to have a good relationship with someone, I may eat what they eat. If I see them eat something and I'll say, you know what, I'll just have what, what are you having? Oh, that's great. I'll have what you're having. I'll drink what you're drinking. You can't make people respect you.
Right.
Respect is a gift. If somebody wants to give it to you, they will. And if they don't, they don't. And I think there's something freeing in that, in knowing that I do everything I needed to do, I'm letting it go. If you want to respect me, you can. And if you don't want to give it, that's fine too. You can't force it. And in some sense, you don't need it.
Oh.
You don't need it.
So when you walked into, let's say, interrogation rooms, is respect even on the table? Is that something that is important in those moments?
So it's interesting because before I became an interrogator, I didn't want to become one. I was a polygraph examiner, and my job was to step in and get confessions from people for cases where we had a difficulty, we didn't have enough proof, or the person wasn't confessing, and this person would get away with a crime. And initially I didn't want to be an interrogator. I thought, who's going to talk to me? They're going to see me, they're going to high five themselves and be like, oh, this is going to be easy. And I'm happy in this situation that the senior examiner believed in me more than I believed in myself. And he's like, you will be good at this because no one's going to see you coming. No one's going to see it coming. They're going to underestimate you.
Right.
And that's a positive thing. And, and I was like, well, how am I going to get people to respect me in the room? What if I have an issue? And one of the things he also told me is like, don't force it. Command respect. So we would do simple things like, hi, how are you? Evy, nice to meet you. Have a seat. I'd show you where to sit. It was my room. I'd have a maneuver where, for example, like my chair had wheels on it. The person's chair whom I was interviewing didn't have wheels on it. The psychology behind that was, I can move around. This is my room. You're stuck in that chair. And so there are certain little things that I could do to show you I was in charge rather than tell you I was in charge. One of the things they warned me about, they said, don't tell people that you're the boss. I'm the boss. I'm the authority. You listen to me. The minute those words come out of your mouth, you just did the exact opposite. You just lost all credibility. When you have to tell somebody you're the boss, do you think they don't know you're the boss? If I said to the person, hey, I'm the special agent, do you think they didn't know they were sitting across from a special agent? And so it takes away from you. And so it's less this and more showing through action. How do you carry yourself? How do you walk into a room? How do you speak? How do you project your voice? All those things exude power, and all those things command respect.
That's amazing. I love that, and I think that everything that you say really does apply to just the real world. Like, obviously you live in this, or you have lived in this like unique situation, but with walking into a room, a lot of people fear going into rooms socially. It's like they don't feel confident enough. And so having a certain body presence, things like that, I just find fascinating. Talk to me about like appearance and things like that, on how looks really do matter.
I know the people say, oh, it's on the inside that counts, not what's on the outside. Yeah, no. Think of it this way. If nobody knows you, all they have to judge you by is what they see. And some research shows that within the first 5 seconds, people make their impression of you. And it's so difficult to undo somebody's first impression of you. And it takes work to undo it if it's negative, if it is the image that you don't want. And so think about, what are you exuding? How are you dressed? Think about the audience. You're going to wear one outfit for something else and a different outfit for something else. When I was an agent, my hair was always pulled back. I wore dark colors. I wore a suit. I wore flat shoes. I had a stern look. There was a look that went with what I was doing. But that was the version of myself that I brought out. There are different versions of ourselves. There's no one you. And when I hear terms like, oh, I'm just going to go be me and see how it goes. I'm just going to be myself. Good luck with that. What version of you are you bringing to the table? You have to know your audience. Who are you speaking to? Because different versions of you resonate with different people. There's a version of you with your parents. There's a version of you when you do these interviews. There's a version of you with your husband. There's a version of you with your employees. So which version of you resonates with certain people? And then understanding the human being across from you, you adjust to them. One of the skills of influence, which I actually talk about in my book, is knowing who your audience is. Then based on who they are, how you assess them, you adjust yourself. You bring out the version of yourself that will speak to them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, and I love that. And do you always start with what is your goal? So like, if my goal is for this person to like me, then I adjust accordingly. If this person, my goal is for this person to fear me, then I adjust accordingly. Do you start with a goal like that?
I won't start with a goal like that, because not that I don't care if somebody likes me or fears me. sake, because that's not my goal. My goal is, what do I want? My goal is, do I want to make a deal with this person? Do I want to sell a book? Do I want to do a show? Do I want to get a confession? Do I want to get an interview? That's my goal. My goal isn't how I want that person to feel about me.
Interesting, okay.
My goal is, what do I want? My end result is this. And how do I navigate my conversation to get to that point? Now, likability is important. If people like you, they are more likely to say yes to you. So, you know, that whole concept of like, I don't care if people like me, you should care because it makes a difference. But going into a room saying, I want this person to like me, why? Now you're trying to figure them out and what makes them happy. It's like, well, what's your goal? Your goal is to make a partnership, do a podcast, do an interview, whatever it is. That's your goal, and then you navigate that. And fear, you want to be careful, because do you really want people to fear you? There's some research out there, some science-based research, and one of the things that they found is those people that have the best communication skills and negotiation, are better at influencing people, are those that have two components. They are competent and they are warm. Okay, so we think, oh, I need to be competent and cold. That's not what resonates with people. It's competence and warmth.
So how do you do that when you're walking into a room and someone's potentially killed somebody, or like, how do you be warm to that? And I've heard you say that you can't let your emotions, you know, rule you, and you can't walk into any of those situations with any type of biasness. I think anyone listening has been in a situation where they are biased because of their experiences, and they walk into either a relationship or a friendship bringing those biases with them. And taking things personally. So those are two skill sets that I've heard you talk about that are so fascinating on how you actually do that.
This is the thing. It's not about me. It goes back to, like, do I want people to like me and fear me? I'm making it about me. What's my goal? My goal is to get information, to get a confession, to find out, did this person do it or did this person not do it? It's not about me. And what we do is our ego gets in the way. Me, 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 me. Does this person like me? This person disrespected me, and I get lost. Now it's not about what I need, it's about me. And so when I walked into that room, what mattered was the information that I needed, so that this person, for example, if it was a child abuse case or child sexual abuse case, and sadly I worked a lot of those, it wasn't about me telling this guy what I thought of him. It was about me getting information so that this guy or gal, it went both ways, couldn't hurt anybody else. That's what mattered. And so if you're able to get yourself out of the way and focus on what the long game is. The long game is, I want X. How do I get to X? So me rolling my eyes, telling that person what a piece of garbage I thought he was or she was, it didn't matter. That's not what the point was. And truly, you can find something good in everybody. I interviewed hundreds of people, and I can't say that I ever interviewed somebody where I was like, this person is 100% pure evil. Really? You can find good qualities in people. And so if you can find those qualities and chase the good, I called it chasing the good. Find the good things in them and pull them out. Because if I only point out all the bad things about you, and I highlight how bad you are, how horrible you are, all the bad things you did, then I'm going to pull the bad part of Lisa out. But if I can find the good parts of Lisa and say, Lisa, I know you're an honest person. Lisa, I know you meant well. Lisa, I know you didn't mean this. Lisa, I know you're a good daughter. If I can find those things about you, because they exist, then I pull out the good part of Lisa. And the good Lisa wants to talk, wants to do the right thing, wants to communicate and work with me. The bad part of Lisa is going to go flip me off and go tell me to myself, right? And so it's really being beyond yourself. People lie to me all the time. They still lie to me. Every day people lie. Everybody lies. I lie, you lie. Some research says that in one conversation, a person will tell 10 lies.
What?
Oh, yes. We shield ourselves. And look, we lie for different things. We lie because we don't want to give, we don't want people to know our personal stuff. We lie to protect ourselves. We lie because we're hiding something. So if you can take that personal element out of it, oh, that person lied to me because they think I'm stupid, it probably has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. And think to yourself, why did they lie to me? Because of something going on within them. And if you can flip it around and not take it personal, you'll be able to see what the big picture is. Short picture, short run, you hurt my feelings. Big picture, I want X, how do I get to X?
God, I love that. Have you always naturally been like that? Because sometimes, at least in the past, and I've really worked on this, my emotions almost just take over without me being able to control them. And so in an effort to control them, I may walk away from a situation, take a deep breath, things like that. But when you're in that sort of high intense atmosphere, is it that you've just trained yourself enough to not get to that point of like really being emotional, or have you always been somewhat able to separate the two?
No, so I had a terrible temper growing up.
Okay.
I wanted to fight everybody. Oh my God, and I grew up in New York and Queens, God help you.
Greek and New York, you're done.
Greek and Queens is like, did you see how she looked at me? Hold my jacket. Oh my God. I saw her look at me. She's gonna get it.
All right, so how on earth did that girl from Queens end up being this person that is so articulate, able to explain everything? Like,
self-assessment. You have to constantly self-assess. I would look at situations, and for example, if I was fighting with a lot of different people in my relationships, I would think to myself, well, there's one common denominator, me. What am I doing? And I've learned over the years, if something goes wrong, not to say, what did that person do to me? I ask myself, what could I have done differently? Or what could I have done to change the outcome? Because I can't control what another person does, but I can fully control myself. And you said something really remarkable and that I agree with. When you get emotional, which I still do, the best thing to do is, if you can, is walk away. Take a break. So don't send that angry text. Don't send that email. Don't get on the phone. I have a 24-hour rule. If I can employ it, like, just don't do anything for 24 hours. After the 24 hours, you see it differently because that emotion has passed, and now you're thinking thoughtfully about what to do. There's a difference. One is you're reacting to what somebody does, and the other thing is you're responding thoughtfully. So when you react, it's impulsive, you just go. When you respond, it means you thought it out, you put some type of strategy or tactics in place, and then you respond. It's like when we would do search warrants or arrest warrants. We didn't just go into the place guns blazing and breaking doors down. It was a thoughtful, tactical breakdown of how we were going to go into that house. Where we were going to go, who's going through the doors, who's watching the back door, who's watching the windows. Are there any guns in the house? Should we be worried? Does this person have a history? We put a plan in place, and then we went in. We didn't go in there to be bullies or to throw down with someone. We wanted everybody to leave safely, anyone not to get hurt. I didn't want to hurt the person either that we were arresting. And just, how can we do this quickly and safely? And so it's kind of that mental breakdown of situations. But the more you deal with stress, this is the thing, the more you have stress in your life, the more you're able to cope better if you know how to use these situations as a learning tool. So when things happen to you, rather than completely losing your mind, take a minute, don't respond, don't do anything. And I have a term, introduce a disruptor. So a disruptor is something like, you can do time. Time is a disruptor, where you have time in the context of the situation where you don't actually do anything, and the time helps you kind of break away from that moment. Or you can go do something. Go surfing, go jump out of a plane, go for a run at the park. Do something that disrupts the hamster wheel that's in your head. This person this person that. You need to break that. So you can do that with an activity. You can even do it with a location. Move locations, change locations, get in your car and drive. So introduce disruptors. I do that to this day. If I have a situation or something that happens that I don't like, and I find myself spinning and replaying that same story, which does me no good, I introduce a disruptor. I'll go to my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class and I will get my ass handed to me on the grappling floor, or I'll go take a cold shower, which I don't like doing, but I do them every night. So I will do something that alters my mindset.
Wow, I love that. So you're saying when you're going, I love what you're saying, like you're going in, you don't go in guns blazing, you have a plan, everything is, thought out. In those moments, what happens? I want to go to talk about like intuition and gut, because are there moments where you're in that situation and you've got a gut feeling about something, but you don't necessarily have any proof? Have you had that situation, and then what do you do about it? Because as a young girl, I definitely had a lot of gut, like instincts about things, but I was always so embarrassed to say anything that I never said anything. And then I remember one time when I was about 12 years old, I was walking home from school and I just had a gut feeling someone was following me in a car, and I turned around and there was this guy in a car and he was going very slow. And I remember being like, well, if you run, like, he's going to think you're an idiot because you're running away from a car. And then I was like, but then you could die. So I actually ran home. And it's one of those moments that could have been so pinnacle in my life if I hadn't have listened to it. So you're in these moments where there's so much on the line. You've got all these departments, you're maybe arresting someone, and you've got that gut feeling.
So it's so interesting that you share that story. I cannot tell you how many women have shared such a similar story. I had the same story happen where it was a woman, she was an anchor that I had been on air with, and she pulled me aside. She said, you know what, a few years ago I was walking down the sidewalk and I felt somebody behind me and I felt uncomfortable, but he didn't do anything, he didn't say anything. And she's like, I thought about crossing the street. I didn't do it because I didn't want to be rude, because he'd be like, all right, lady, relax. She's like, I didn't cross the street. I stayed there, and you know what he did? He robbed me.
Ooh.
So in those situations, you have my blessing to be rude.
Right.
Because it's not about that. It's like, let them feel offended. Or even when you're waiting online at Starbucks, if like I have one of those people who really like to be on top of me, I mean, I will turn around, I'll give them a look. Or if I don't like the way I feel, I get up and leave. Move, go, don't be there. So it's really about trusting your instincts. If it feels wrong, follow it. There's actually science that the Department of Defense is doing where they're researching your sixth sense, and they found that it actually works in the field. And they've been investing money into it to see how you can enhance that, because some of the military out in the field have been able to avoid IEDs, explosive devices, improvised explosive devices. And so when they asked them, how did you know not to go this way? I had a feeling. And so even if you can't articulate it, even if you don't understand it, if you feel it, follow it. There is a point where you have to trust in yourself. It's there for a reason. Trust yourself. If you're wrong, you're wrong.
Is that a good enough reason? So let's say you've protected so many presidents now. Have you had moments where you've just had a gut feeling? And if so, do you then follow it through? Like, what does that look like?
Well, how that would work is there's a lot of plan and preparation. So the part that you see, the agents walking around, the protectee, the president, whoever it is, that's nothing. The planning and preparation that would go into the proactive element to securing something, going to a place, that is 80% of it. And so by the time you get there, you're pretty solid, but you've got a plan A and a plan B and a plan C for when things break bad. And if you see something that doesn't feel right, you notify the other people, hey, this looks off. What do you think? What do you think? And then collectively we make that decision. But again, if you're prepared, and this isn't just in protection and security, I mean in anything, the more prepared you are, the more you've done your homework, the more you know about your stuff, you walk in not only confident, but super aware. And when things go wrong, you can pivot. If you're not prepared and if you haven't done the work, if you're not proactive, when things go wrong, what do? You lose your mind. You freeze. You don't know what to do. And so there's so much of that element, but we put so much work, so much strategic, so much training, so much emphasis on preparing for securing a place, securing the person, and then the what if. None of us had this delusion, oh my God, I put everything in place, it's going to be perfect.
Right.
Despite all the manpower, all the research, we knew that something could go wrong. No, I could never say to anybody, I 100% tell you that this person's going to be safe. I can guarantee it. I can't. But what I can guarantee is all the stuff I'm going to do. And that if something does happen, I'm going to respond quickly, swiftly, thoughtfully, violently, whatever I need to do.
That was amazing. In your business, I assume that you get confronted a lot. I've heard you talk about confrontation. Most people battle it and try to fight it off, but you say welcome it. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yes. So I have a lot of folks who come up to me, what do I do? This person's confronting me, I'm nervous, and I don't like to fight, and some people don't like confrontation. But what happens is when we go out of our way to avoid confrontation, it ends up hurting us in the end. We end up stifling our voices, we end up suffering, we end up dealing with people and things and situations where we don't speak, and it's so much worse for us, not just mentally, physically, health-wise, it just demolishes you. And so embracing confrontation is a mindset that I took on, that it's like you can You can disagree with someone, and it doesn't have to be a full brawl.
Right.
You can articulate to somebody, say, I hear you, I disagree with you with this, and this is why. Here's my perception of that. So there's a way to disagree with someone. And if they escalate, let them escalate. If they scream, let them scream. You sit in your chair, you stay calm and collected, you remain professional, you let them become the fool. You don't have to mimic that. Sometimes going back to what I used to do in the interview room, I would have people, they did not want to talk to me. They hated me simply because of what I represented. I represented law enforcement. And so from that moment, I'd walk into a room and people would be rude to me, scream at me, yell at me, call me names. What do? Do I reciprocate? Or do I sit back and I wait? I let them vent. And you know what? 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, they're done. They're tired. They got out of their system. And now we can have a conversation.
I love that so much.
Don't be afraid of it. So what? Somebody yells at you and somebody confronts you and embrace it. Look at it like, all right, what's up? Let's go. And I have to give my husband kudos for this because anytime the situation and there's something, I'm like, hey, this could get confrontational. He's like, yeah. He's like, I love it. Because he looks at it almost like a puzzle, like a master. He's like, how are we going to move this person? How are we going to maneuver them from here to here? And look at it as a challenge. Don't look at it as a negative thing. And you're going to have people confront you. But at the same time, you should be able to confront people about things that you don't feel right about in your life. Don't sit there and swallow it.
Also, yeah, let's talk about that. How do you do that? Because typically when people go to confront other people, it's like, all right, there's going to be a battle here. They're going to get their walls up. But I've heard you talk so eloquently about the words you use and how you are able to confront people without it feeling like you're being combative. What are the tricks there? Because I love this.
Well, don't take it personal, and don't talk to people like they're garbage. Don't sit there and yell at people. If you yell at people and talk to them like garbage, you're going to get garbage. And so if I want information, if I'm trying to get something from you, or I want to be able to understand what you're thinking, I'm going to speak to you in a way that you understand. But I will approach you one at a time when I am not angry, because there are moments where I'm like, I can't speak to this person. I will not speak to this person. I need to calm down. I need to think clearly. And when I get in the right mindset, then I'll figure out how to speak to you. So let's say you're dealing with somebody who's being dishonest and they've been lying to you. Well, one thing to think about is when you approach them, you don't want to say, hey, I know you've been lying to me and this is how I know. Think of it this way. Who likes to be called a liar?
No one.
No one likes to be called a liar. So what you can say is like, hey, Lisa, look, I feel that there's some, you're not being truthful with me about everything. There's some things that you're holding back, and I really want this relationship to work. So I'm hoping we can have an honest conversation and open, dialogue, and just really kind of get to the bottom of what's going on. It'd really, really be important to me. So I can be as pissed at you as much as I want, but I would do that. I actually did this with an ex-boyfriend, and I suspected that he was being dishonest. He was either talking to his ex-girlfriend or whatever. This was many years ago. Do you think I was livid? I was furious, but I needed to know what was going on. I was like, I need to know. I can't spend time with this person. And so I put on my non-confrontational, I'm going to talk to you nicely hat, and I put on my interviewer hat, and I said, and I just began talking to him nicely. Oh, tell me about your last relationship. Wow, it sounds like it was really important to you. What was it like? That must have been hard to break up. Do you really think I want to hear about her? No, I did not. But I sat there and I remember being on the phone with him, listening to this conversation, and then eventually his walls go down. He forgets who he's talking to. He starts telling me more and more. And as he's talking to me, I realize, oh my God, he's still talking to her.
Wow.
Yes. And so at that point, I got what I wanted. I needed knowledge to figure out, do I stay or do I go? And so because I was able to get that information, I was able to go and leave that relationship and avoid future pain. So there's 3 things you should think about when you communicate with people: body language, verbal language, paralinguistics. Body language is how you're seated. So right now, I like you, you like me, and one of the indicators is the way our legs are crossed. They're actually crossed toward each other. If we didn't like each other, we'd be maybe sitting something like this. I'd be a little bit more that way, so I use my body as a barrier. Or even leaning in. When you like somebody, you lean in. And so this creates like, hey, I like you, let's talk. So people are more engaged. Now, verbal language is kind of what we touched on before. Not calling somebody a liar, watching the things you say to them. Even when I would work cases where somebody would steal money, I would never say to them, did you steal that money? Did you take that money? If somebody raped someone, I wouldn't say, did you rape her? Rape is an ugly word. Who wants to be a rapist? Did you hurt her? right? So I would be mindful of the words that I used. And so that is the verbal language that we assessed. Paralinguistics is how you say the things you say. And so again, based on your audience, if you have somebody who's a man who's really strong, who's a boss, you might want to deepen your voice, bring up a little bit more strength, and when you talk, project. If you're dealing with like a young girl, you want to bring it down, soften it, match that person, mirror her language. And something as simple as, look at the words people use, like they like, oh, that's great, that's great. You know what I'm going to say? That's great, that's great. I even use it when I do emails. When I receive somebody's email and I look at how they introduce themselves. Hi, Evy, dear Evy, hello, Evy. Guess how I respond back? I look at their email. If they write hi, I write hi. If they write hello, I write hello. If they write dear, I write dear.
And that's to meet them where they are? What is that purpose?
To create something in common. I get you get me. Subconsciously, it makes them feel like, oh, I like her. She used dear, I use dear. They don't know that I'm doing that. Even when I close the email, sincerely, I'll put sincerely. People like people who they have things in common with. But don't pretend to be something you're not. So just bring the version of you that would resonate best with them.
So you're saying I'm not faking it, I'm just bringing out a part of me that
works with that person better. So for example, usually when I did interviews in the past, I would bring a stronger version of me because typically I interviewed men who committed crimes. And so I had to be fair and balanced, but I also had to exude a bit more strength and power, right? But I remember one occasion I interviewed a young woman. She was 22 years old. She was a babysitter nanny. And there was a baby with a broken arm. And I had to interview her. Now, she had been interviewed about 4 times by state police. And they were like, she's not giving anything up. Do you want to give it a try? And I said, sure. So when I saw her and I walked into the interview room, this is my criminal now, right? She was scared. She was seated like this. Her voice was really, really soft and low. And I'm not going to come in there with the interrogator, Evy, because that would not have worked with her. But what worked with her is, hi, how are you? How's everything? I brought the version of me. It's still me that would work with her. Hour and a half later, confession. Wow. So it's really about paying attention to the person across from you. How do you do that? Shut up and listen to people. Talk less. I always say 80% listen, 20% talk. And especially when you first meet people and you're trying to figure them out, let them do the talking. Ask open-ended questions, and then that way, let people guide you and give you the information you need rather than guessing, what do I say to this person? Who am I talking to? Let them tell you. And people love to talk about themselves. Let them knock themselves out, you know? Let them tell you everything about themselves. And then you figure out who they are, you figure out how they think, what's important to them, their values, their belief systems, what they want to share with you, and then you can chime in more intelligently rather than guessing or making assumptions and the wrong assumptions. In the U.S. Secret Service, a lot of people don't realize that you also protect foreign heads of state. We deal with foreign countries. So on one occasion, I was in Mexico, and I was the agent in charge of, it was the G20 summit. And so all these heads of states are there, to include the president at the time and the head of China. And so they were having what they call a closed door meeting, meaning sometimes they have these private meetings where it's the presidents and then maybe just like a handful of their head cabinet members. So they're in there, they're closed, they're secure. I was the person in charge of the venue and the site. And so somebody from his delegation wanted to go in. Now, I don't authorize who goes in or out. Like I was the muscle, I guess you could say. I mean, I was a muscle. And so he tried to get in. And he was huge. He was a really huge guy. And I was like, sir, you can't come in. He was not happy about it. I got the State Department over, my counterpart, and I said, look, you're the one who has the names of everyone. Can we just double check to make sure that we didn't leave this man off the list? And we looked at him and we're like, no, sir, you can't come in. And he was pissed. I think we definitely insulted him. We didn't know who he was. And when you're in that type of position, everybody is somebody. Mm-hmm. Everybody is somebody. Everybody. And so if everybody's somebody, if everybody's important, then nobody's important. So he kind of tried to sneak in. I wouldn't let him. And then he got very angry with me and he put hands on me. And he grabbed me by my suit and like shoved me. And when he shoved me back, the doors to where the presidents were meeting were behind. So he literally shoves me through, and I banged through the doors. And then I had this moment because I wasn't expecting it. You know, you can expect to fight with certain people. When I'd go out for an arrest or somebody wasn't complying, I would expect that type of behavior. But I didn't expect it from like this high-level delegate who I still don't know who he is. And, you know, I had this voice in my head, and this is where I went from Secret Service to like back to Queens. I'm like, oh, no, the fuck he didn't. I'm like, this guy just put hands on me? I'm like, oh, fuck no. I grabbed him by his suit collar and I just shoved him back into all the Chinese delegates that were there. And so he turned out to be a general. I had no idea. And so they all jumped on top of me. And I remember like one delegate pulled me off. Another delegate like put me in a chokehold. Somebody slammed me up against the wall, and I've got all these foreign delegates on me, and I'm like, fuck you, game on.
All in front of the president of the United States.
Now so what happened is we backed into his office, the doors opened where they were meeting, and then we went back in the hallway.
Oh, okay.
We're brawling. And then thankfully, like somebody alerted some of my colleagues who were like further down. And then, you know, that's when the interpreter came over and he said, shame on you, you touched one of our generals. And I'm like, pfft. I was like, you tell your general that picking fights with ladies isn't very, you know, general-like. So, but, you know, I had to control that rage. I'm in the middle of a G20 summit, and you just got to reel it in. But at the same time, you have to defend yourself. Like, I am not about violence. Like, you know, violence is like such an obvious way to fight. And quite frankly, it's a very insecure way to fight. People who are overly aggressive and violent because you're so afraid and you feel like it's like overcompensation. And I feel like if I'm going to waste my energy on you, it better be worth it.
Yeah, I love that. This is what I really want to talk about. The amount of people, obviously your case is super extreme, but you're a freaking expert. But your everyday person like myself and the people listening, it's you get disrespected often. There are certain things where people cross a boundary, cross a line, and it's very difficult in that moment to stay cool, to know how to handle it. And then even if you get yourself super angry, to be able to calm down back to neutral. So what are the elements that you feel like are important for people to build? Because like I said at the beginning, I really do believe it's a skill. And it's a skill to know how to handle and navigate different situations. So when someone physically crosses your boundary, and let's say you don't have the physical skills to actually fight them off, what do you suggest people do?
Okay, so this is heavy. This is like so many layers. So let me say one thing first. First, before we start assessing another person, it's me first. I have to have self-control. If I don't have self-control over myself, if I cannot master myself, forget about the outside world. So it always has to begin with you. So knowing that I am hot-headed and knowing that my first inclination is to tell people to go fuck themselves, which is true, I know that I have work to do. So I'm very aware of that, and I'm very aware that that is not the right thing to do. So I don't say this like, yeah, bravado. I say this like, yeah, this is a trait of mine that I've had to work very, very hard to kind of curtail and rein in.
God, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but there's something super powerful here. What made you go from you being that to acknowledging you're that and then acknowledging it doesn't serve you?
Because I was fighting with everybody.
And you just said, something must be wrong here? Like,
yes, what? I was wrong. If I'm fighting with this person and that person, and even my dad, you know, I used to fight with my dad all the time because I didn't agree with the way he thinks. I love my dad, let's put that out there. But we would fight all the time. And then one day I'm like, why am I fighting with all these people? Why am I trying to convince everybody of what I think? I'm like, and I really started to have like this thoughtfulness, because if you're fighting with everybody, if you're having problems at work, you're having problems at home, you're having problems with friends, if you're having problems with everybody, there's one common denominator, and it's me, and I would see that. And so I was like, I gotta reel me in. Plus, like, it's exhausting. And I have no time. I realize I'm wasting energy fighting with people. And I'm not saying that some people don't deserve to be put in their place, but I guess I look at it like, are you worth my time? Most people aren't. So you have to choose that. So going back to what you asked first, it's self-mastery. You gotta have yourself locked down. You gotta have emotional intelligence over yourself. It's a Greek saying, know thyself. If you don't know thyself, nothing else I can teach you matters. Now, if you know and understand yourself, then at that point, betrayal, I think there's different levels, Lisa, of betrayal. of disrespect. Like if it's some Yahoo on the street who's giving me a hard time, like road rage or whatever, I don't care. I'm busy, I gotta go somewhere. So like I would not entertain that stuff. So I guess I think of it like, are you worth me responding to? Do I have to respond to you? But I also do think like you have to be super careful, because if you let a lot of things go, then you will have people who will test you.
Yes.
And truth be told, like I can see people, and I've experienced it myself. Like I feel like every 5 years I have like a betrayer like show up.
Ooh.
That's every couple of years I'm due one person to like really cross that line, because I really do avoid I avoid the drama, because I focus on my work, I focus on my family, and I avoid putting my energy into negative things and people. But I think you will have people test the waters with you.
I love the quote, you teach people how to treat you.
Yeah.
So it's literally, the more you let things go, the more they're like, oh, I can do this, and they're not going to retaliate. Tell me Evy's version then of levels of disrespect and how you actually handle each stage.
Yeah, so you know what? Let me share this. This is what happens to us. There's some science, some research they've done in the chemistry of the brain. And it comes to trust. And this is where we feel usually disrespected. And this is on a higher level. This is where it hits us deeper. So when you trust, there's two types of trust. There's conditional trust and unconditional trust. Now, conditional trust is, I'm going to do a business deal. I'm going to buy a car from a salesman. So when you deal with conditional trust, you access a higher level of your brain. And when you access this complicated place of your brain, you are trusting conditionally, which means you're working very hard. You understand this person will manipulate you. You understand that you can only trust them conditionally. And you do expect some type of maybe betrayal or lies or something to happen. But you work very, very hard when you're in that space. So when that person betrays you, like that you bought a car and the car salesman, screws you over, you're like, you know what? I didn't like that guy. I knew he was going to do that. I kind of felt it. You're upset, but it's not like this deep thing. That's conditional trust. That's a lot of work though. Now, unconditional trust, the science shows that accesses a different part of our brain, a more primitive part of our brain. And this is where we like to live because it's less work. So this is like the trust you have with your partner. This is the trust you have with a family member or a close friend, which means I'm not working so hard because I'm giving you all this unconditional trust. But then what happens is when they betray you, because you don't expect to get betrayed like you did with the car salesman or in a business negotiation. So when you get this kind of betrayal, this is when it crushes you. And this is where you have such a hard time getting over it. This is where you see people going through a divorce or a painful friendship, or where they have that deep, betrayal, and they're like, they can't overcome it. And I think it helps for you to understand why that is. Because truly there's science behind it. It's like understanding, am I trusting this person conditionally or unconditionally? So although we like to trust people unconditionally, and I have been there, I've trusted unconditionally, and I have been betrayed. It's going to happen to all of us. I think though we set triggers or red flags for us to know when it's going to happen. If you're just open to everybody all the time, you're just going to be inviting it in all the time. So you do have to create those barriers for yourself, but you also have to do your self-assessment of people. Like, who am I going to let into my inner circle? You are in my inner circle. I select the people in my inner circle. And I think you should have people audition in a sense, right? You should audition to be in my life. And that's where your self-worth comes in.
Wow, that was so articulate and amazing. And so then my next question is then, when we let the people in, at least for me, I find it even more difficult when they disrespect me or if they've crossed the boundary. I find it way more difficult to handle in those situations. And I think that I allow like you were saying, the unconditional, my guard is way less down. So I let them get away, quote unquote, with more things. So you've repeated multiple times emotional intelligence. So I'd love to kind of break that down even more and say, and put the two together on how you build the emotional intelligence and then how you use that in these situations, whether it's a work colleague or it's someone very close to you.
Yeah, so when we talk about a work colleague or anything like that, or issues like that, I mean, I've experienced those. I remember once I had a work colleague, this is in my previous career when I was in the service, reprimand me, and he was an equal to me, about a case, about something that he thought I was supposed to do that I wasn't supposed to do. And he had just kind of like gotten sort of an elevated position, and I think he wanted to put on a bit of a show, and he did this in front of people. And it's like everything in me to not like rip him to shreds. So I knew he was wrong. I went and got the case file or whatever I needed. And I went back downstairs and I stepped away because I really like nothing good was gonna come out of my mouth. But I also understand that it was work, and I also understood that there was people around me. And I was like, you're not gonna own my response to you. I'm gonna own it. That's why. I do it for me, not for you. So I got the case, I grabbed him, and I'm like, hey, we'll call him Jay. I'm like, hey, Jay. I'm like, come here. I'm like, I want to speak to you. And I remember I pulled him into the stairwell and to speak to him in private, because I learned through my interviewing techniques that when you want to let somebody know what you really think of them, or when you want to reprimand somebody or discipline someone in some way, you should do it in private. Because I knew if I ripped him in front of everybody, he just would have ripped me back and we would have gotten nowhere. Because he's naturally going to get defensive because I embarrassed him. Shame is a big thing. So I pulled him to the side in the stairwell. I said, here you go. This is what you're saying you need. This is what was done. And I'm like, this is the thing. I gave you the courtesy of pulling you into the stairwell to speak to you in private. You've known me how many years? I've never spoken to you like that again. Today was the first and last time you're going to speak to me like that again. I was like, do you understand? And I'm giving you more respect than you deserve because I'm addressing you here in private. Have I ever spoken to you this way? And he's like, no. And I'm like, don't ever do that again. Here you go. Next time, come speak to me with decency and respect. But I was also able to do that, and he was also able to absorb it again because I did it in private. Now, I'm not saying they're all going to go smoothly like that for everybody, but you choose when and how you respond. And so I want, for me, it's like I own what I'm going to do. I can't own what you do, but I can own what I do. But when I feel that rage, because I feel it all the time, I really, when I can, I step away. Now that to me, like honestly, that's like low vibration. Like stuff like that, when you deal with people like that, always think low vibration, low vibration. Like this person, this is silly, like, and most of the times it is, and most of the time you're dealing with people's egos. Now, when we're elevating to like people, I have to be honest, my inner circle is small. And I've just learned when I was younger, I had friends everywhere, and now this is my friend, and that's my friend. And I realized over years, I'm like, they're not all friends. And what matters is the quality of the people you keep to you, and I'm very thoughtful. But there are certain standards that I create for myself. So it kind of goes back to what you said about treatment, and I say you get what you tolerate. So if I know someone's lying to me, I'll be thoughtful as far as why they're lying to me, because sometimes people will lie out of fear, they'll lie because they're ashamed, and I will work to see if that person will be truthful with me, or if they hold back for a reason. But when somebody lies and they really hurt me, betray me, at least for me, Lisa, I'll tell you this, when I'm done, when I make that conscious choice to be done with someone, I'm done with them. You know, when I feel that kind of betrayal. And again, I feel like every 5 years, but usually those betrayals, those deep ones, come from someone close to you. It's not going to be usually an acquaintance. It's going to be a family member. It's going to be a relationship. It's going to be all those different things. But you also have to have enough common sense to know when to walk away, when to know when to be done.
When you're a woman of a certain age, you might start feeling a little bit of pain or discomfort during intercourse, or even you just feel embarrassed or ashamed by the fact that your body is changing. And as a result, you end up having less sex. But sexual health is health. And that's why I'm so thrilled to introduce you to Taboo. Now, through science-backed methods to address the underlying causes of pain, dryness, low libido, and more, Taboo has helped tens of thousands of us women get an important part of their lives back, and that's sex. 76% of women using Taboo products as part of their sexual wellness routine reported an increase in their confidence. And that's not even to mention the decreased pain with sex and increased libido. Now, Taboo's Golden Hour Kit includes everything that you need to confidently kick off and maintain your sexual wellness routine. Click the link below, guys, and use coupon code LISA15 to save 15% off your order. But I've actually got a quote of yours that is very powerful. I would like to read. My success is in standing my ground wasn't really about my physical strength. It was about my mental conviction. I had to speak with confidence to make sure those who heard my message heard it clearly the first time. And when I did act, I had to do it so in a way that assured it would not be mistaken for weak or uncertain of my abilities.
Yeah.
Woo! How do you do that?
It's the way you carry yourself. I feel like
break it down.
What does size matter? Like, that's the thing. Like, power and strength, first, it lives in the mind.
Right.
So if I think myself strong, I am strong. If I think I'm like, you know, even with that, you know, Chinese delegate, or if, when I've had altercations with somebody bigger than me, or somebody's messed with me, you know, and I knew maybe they could take me. You know, in my mind, I'm like, all right, man, you know, you may walk over here, and you may beat me, but I promise you, you're gonna be limping back. You're gonna have to earn that. And that's kind of like that sentiment I've always had. Like, I don't ever put myself underneath. It's like, I'm gonna brawl if I need to brawl. But again, like I'm speaking this way, but it really isn't my go-to behavior. It was, though. Like, I really did want to fight everybody when I was younger, and I wanted to express my opinion and force my opinion down other people's throats. And I'm like, why am I doing that? And I realized that we do that, one, ego. Your ego runs amok. And then two, insecurity. Especially when you're younger, you're trying to figure yourself out, so you don't know who the hell you are. And being grounded in yourself. So I really think it's like just about pausing and not letting yourself kind of like run wild.
But once you do that, because you then say like, and when I did act, I had to do so in a way that assured it would not be mistaken for weak or uncertain of my abilities.
All right, so I'll give you an example, paralinguistics. And you know I've talked about this. If I don't want somebody to go into this room, I'm gonna say, you can't go into this room. Versus, you can't go into this room? So my tone, my pitch, I speak with conviction. So what do you sound like when you deliver your information? What words do you use? That's the thing. What do they hear? What do they hear when they hear you? Like, I know a lot of people who can't watch themselves on camera, who can't hear themselves, like, oh my God, is that what I sound like? Then fix it.
How would you start to fix it then?
Look, you want to strengthen your voice. You don't want to be like, okay, you can't go into this room. You can't go into this room. It's like, you can't go into this room. You also have to believe in what you're saying and why you're saying. So when I did my previous job, like, I was protecting the President of the United States. I had the backing of the US Secret Service. And look, having that gives you confidence. Gives you confidence. But I also went through training academies, and I had people get in my face. I had to deal with things. But the more adversity you deal with, the more resilient you become. When you don't deal with adversity, when you avoid conflict, you don't know what to do when real conflict shows up. Repetition. Repetition. And creating habits that are healthy so that when things happen, you default to those habits. And you pull up that version of you. So I have that version of me that's the stand your ground version. It's like, oh, no, no, no. But I'm also tactical about it. So if somebody can come at me or do something or betray me, I'm not going to come at them at the most obvious of ways. I'm also not going to do anything that brings me lower. You know, and it gets really hard, man, because that Greek part of me and that Queens part of me wants to come out. But I won't call that person names. I really, really will control. But I'm like, I'll fix you in some other way. But the right way, the best way, the strategic way. Not to hurt you, but to kind of get you out of their way. And you know what's interesting too? There's two main reasons, or well, there's two types of personas to be careful of. People who are extremely self-righteous and people who use justification. And so let me start with justification. When I did interviews, polygraphs, I would interview people who did really horrible things. And can I tell you, they would almost always justify it. We would have the saying, any person can do anything at any given moment in time, given the opportunity. Because you can justify it to yourself. Well, I punched him or I hit him with a bat because he shoved me. That's justification. Or I'm gonna go after him and his money you know, or after his family because he did this to me or she did that to me. And justification is very dangerous because you use that to justify you doing something bad, or somebody else will use that to justify harming you. At the end of the day, what you're doing is horrible. Just be aware of that. You're just justifying it to yourself. Even when I interview people who committed crimes of passion or just crime in general, well, I did this to her because she did that, because she led me on, because she teased me, whatever the case may be, or because she, you know, betrayed me in this way. And so people hit back. So you ever have that time where you're like, I can't believe this person did this to me? It's like, yes, you can. You know why? Because in their minds, they justified what they're doing to you. That's why sometimes we have these moments like, what are they thinking? They're thinking, I'm justified. The other persona to watch for is self-righteousness. That is huge. So that's the I am holier than thou, I know better, I'm above you. Or when you have people, you ever have anybody be like, you know what, I'm really gonna pray for you because you need it, right? Yeah. Anybody says that to you, it's like, first of all, it's the most condescending thing you can say to someone because it's insinuating I'm closer to God or Allah or whoever you believe to than you are. So I'm gonna talk to him for you. No, don't worry about it. I'll go talk to him or her myself. And with self-righteousness, it's like you believe you're so right, and that's rigidity. That when you think, no, I'm so right. Let me tell you how right I am. Red flags. And look at how people treat other people, because if they gossip about other people, they treat other people the wrong way, I promise you they're doing the same thing to you or will do the same thing to you. You have to look at people holistically, who they are with everybody, because that's going to come back to you.
That's so amazing. I love those breakdowns. So if you've noticed these characteristics in people, is that when you're like, okay, this is someone that is probably going to cross a boundary, disrespect me, so I'm going to distance myself from them.
You feel dirty, right? Don't you feel that when you deal with certain people and they haven't betrayed you yet, but there's these little lies or little betrayals and you feel like, you feel dirty.
I wouldn't have said dirty, but I totally get what you mean. But that's one of my triggers, is being spoken down to. So I definitely understand what you're saying.
What do you do? I'm flipping the interview around.
I know.
I'm curious because...
What would I do? Okay, so if it was in business, I wouldn't bring it up because I wouldn't want to show that I'm weak, because it is a weakness. I absolutely see it because it's a trigger. And I think any triggers can be a weakness. So for me, it's my trigger, and I've identified it as a trigger. I know that it means that that's a weakness. I wouldn't want to show it's a weakness. And to be honest, I think part of me is like, it's a weakness and I just need to get stronger. And I tell myself I'm still in training. You're not there yet, Lisa. Like, I don't beat myself up over it. But I do acknowledge it. I acknowledge what has happened. I acknowledge it's a trigger. I acknowledge it comes from my childhood. And I take deep breaths, and I may either go quiet, actually, or I step back and will try and get out of that conversation immediately because I do not want them to see it. But I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I do the opposite with my family. If it's my family, in the moment, I'm like, maybe you didn't realize, but you actually just disrespected me there. So I always then follow up with, hey, I know you don't mean to. I know your intention. I know you love me, but I feel like you actually just disrespected me here. And then we'll just have that back and forth. And it's like, oh my God, no, I didn't mean to. This is why I did it. I was like, oh, cool. Thank you for explaining. And if it's me, I'll even say, actually, yeah, you're right. Thank you for explaining. I realize this is my insecurity. I have to go and work on it. But if I still disagree and I think that they actually did disrespect, I will keep going and I'll start to break down what language, what word they used, because I really want to bond with them. And I think that when it's a stranger, if you put guard up, it's not a big deal. But when you want to get close to somebody, I'm always going to reveal the true, the real me. Okay.
So I feel like with family, I let a lot go with family.
Interesting.
Because it's just who they are. I guess like I've come to a place in age where I'm like, I know who I am, I'm grounded as a person. And I don't feel like I have to argue every point. Like sometimes like I'll have to check somebody here and there. I'll be like, hey, let's relax. And I'll do that. But even with my husband, I'll be like, hey, I didn't appreciate you saying that. But I let a lot go because I found like it doesn't matter. Like I don't get as affected by it. Because you said something, you're like, most of the time they don't come from a place of a bad place. So if I know they don't come from a bad place, why do I have to correct it? Like that's me. I'm just like, okay, that's mom, that's my brother, that's my husband, but like if I'm betrayed in some way, like I will have it out. But usually for me, betrayal, like we're talking true, like you like stab me in the back, wherever you want to, I'm done with you. Because at that point, like you've done so much damage. And I'm very mindful, I'm very mindful of my behavior, because sometimes we can betray someone and justify why we're doing it, but I have to do this because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do by you in your little head, but maybe not by everybody else, or maybe not by me. And so if someone crosses that line, for me, it's done. If somebody has it in them to harm you in such a significant way, why on earth would I ever want to repair that? I also can't bring you back in. It's just like, look, it's done. Just go. And then I think that's more powerful. And you don't even have to tell people. I've cut people out of my life silently. Why do I have to tell you? I just pull back, pull back, pull back. And then one day it's like, she's not around anymore. Yeah.
How do you not let that feeling fester or build up then?
Oh, sure, I let it fester and build up. But I do it in the privacy of my own home.
And then you just let it go?
Yeah, I'll go work out. I'll go run. I'll complain to my husband or bitch to my brother. Like, I'll do that. I let it come out of me. Like you can't, this is the thing, you have to experience things. We don't want to suppress stuff, because you suppress it, it's going to manifest itself in other ways. So you are allowed to do whatever it is you need to do to move through it. So I do that. Like I have moments where I'm like heated and angry. I'm not like kumbaya all the time. Like, you know, no, like I'll go through it. I may spend a week in rage, but then I know like, don't have too much contact with people. Like if it's that deep of a thing. But I've developed over time, again, resiliency and habit. It's just habit, repetition. You bounce back, you bounce back. You also, like, and I say this in the book, don't be surprised. Everybody at the end of the day is looking out for their self-interests. They really are. Not because they're bad people, they just are. And if somehow you get in the way of that, you might get either pushed to the side or bulldozed completely. And so you have to understand that. So when you see it from that perspective, it gives it a little bit of logic. I mean, you understand the pain of it, but you shouldn't be surprised. You shouldn't be like, I can't believe it. It's like, I get it. You can say that to a point, but then you know what? Let's move on, because then you get into that victim mentality. And that's a really dangerous place to live. I know a lot of people who live there, or I've experienced a lot of people who live there. I've kind of like tippy-toed into that place myself, like when I was much younger. And I'm like, I'm not living in this space. I'm not going to be a victim. You know, I don't like that word. And so for me, the language I use in my mind is so powerful. Like I'm really thoughtful, like of what I consume, what language I use to define myself.
When you have rapport, you have trust. When you have trust, you have cooperation. But the majority of the public think rapport is that, hi, how are you? It's the thing that I do in the beginning of a conversation. I relax that person and then we go into it. Rapport is actually something deeper. When you think of rapport, it's first, it doesn't start at the beginning and then stop. Rapport is something you keep straight across the board, beginning, middle, and end. You maintain it throughout. Think of it like a ping pong match. You speak, I speak. You speak, I speak. It's as if we're playing ping pong. You got the ball, I got the ball. So it's this ability to understand and communicate with people. And when you can establish rapport and understand how to establish rapport, this is when your communication is top tier. So there's a couple of strategies with developing rapport, and they're science-based, there's research behind them, and these are the things that you can do to connect with people. So one of the first ones is acceptance, which is where I think people have the hardest time. When you're having a conversation with someone, it's about having the ability to accept what they're saying.
As truth?
No, just as their truth.
Okay.
Right? So it's not me telling you, no, you're wrong. It's me allowing you to say what you want to say and me accepting what you're saying. So if you think of an example, I'll go back to my previous career when I would interview somebody who he was either a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer. I would have to accept that they hated America. I would have to accept that America was the bad guy in their lens. I may not personally agree with it, but I would have to accept it. When you have acceptance, it means you're allowing now the person to talk. The whole key to rapport is how do I keep people communicating and going and then feeling comfortable? That is acceptance. When you want to have good communication with people, you set acceptance, right? And that means kind of pushing your ego out of the way and just saying, this is what Lisa thinks, and whether I agree with it or not is not the point, right? It's accepting what you're saying as your truth. Now, when you have acceptance, which is probably the biggest hurdle, when you can conquer that, the other thing you can do is have adaptability. So with adaptability, it means not being rigid. And I know I've said this to you before. When you are rigid, when you're like, this is it, this is one way, this is the only way, you will struggle. Any human being that's not able to adapt and change to their environment, and this goes with all species, they will struggle, they will not survive. So adaptability is key. You may have an agenda. When I go to this meeting or when I engage in this conversation, I want to talk about this. And now you begin speaking to that person, but maybe that person starts talking to you about the day they had or how they're feeling or something else. When you try to course correct them and you try to shift them back to where you want to go, that's not adaptability. Adaptability means allowing a person to go where they want. And this is where ego comes in. With these strategies, you can't have ego. So accepting someone means it's not about me, it's not about my ego. I accept who you are, I accept what you say. I may not like it. Adaptability is I'm going to adapt and allow you to maybe take the conversation where you want to go. I'm going to adapt to you. And these strategies allow people to feel that you are speaking with them, they feel that they are heard. Another great strategy to use in rapport building is autonomy. Autonomy allows people to have power. You're giving people power back. So when you're negotiating with someone, and the negotiation really is to take things away from them, or when you're trying to get something from them, when you're trying to get them to agree with what you want, we don't want to bulldoze people, right? We don't want to make people or force people to choose. It creates resistance, it creates challenge in the relationship, it creates people pushing back, putting up their defensive barriers. They don't want that. So when you use autonomy, it's saying, okay, I'll give you a choice. Would you like this or would you like this? Now I create the choice that you choose, but by that simple way of me giving you a choice, I'm giving you some kind of power back. I'm giving you the ability to feel like Evy's not telling me what to do. She's letting me choose. So often when I would arrest people, and if it was a nonviolent arrest, I would give them autonomy. And when I could, which didn't happen often, again, it was with nonviolent cases, I would say, look, I have to arrest you. Now, I can come to your home and arrest you, or if you'd like, you can come to me and I can arrest you. And so you're getting arrested. You don't want it. There's nothing about it that's great. But I'm giving you some power over something that you feel completely powerless over. So it's, which do you choose? Most people would say, okay, can we make an appointment? And we would make appointments and say, okay, come in on this day at this time. And we would set it up. So that is autonomy. In that moment, you're losing all that power, but I'm giving you some power back. That builds rapport. It builds a connection. I assure you, whenever I made these appointments, the person, although they weren't happy, they appreciated it. So these are rapport building strategies. And another one that is really powerful is empathy. And empathy is the ability to see things from another person's perspective. So again, going back to when I did maybe interrogations, I would speak to people who did horrible crimes or terrorism, speaking to people who thought doing certain acts, certain violent acts, they were justified, there were reasons. Now, my goal or my purpose was not to shame that person or judge that person. I had nothing to do with that. My goal was to listen and to try to empathize, not sympathize. I could not sympathize why you would commit this act, but I could try to empathize as to how you got there, why you thought this way. When you have empathy, when you give a person empathy, it's the ability for me to understand your world, to see things through your lens. Now we're connecting. All this stuff is rapport. All these techniques, these skills that you use are rapport. And now you've got this flow. Now you've got people liking you, wanting to talk to you, wanting to say yes to you. And the whole purpose behind this is if I'm in a situation where somebody is giving me conditional trust, which is trust with conditions, but I want to move that relationship forward, or I have someone who's giving me no trust and I want to move that relationship forward, I do it through rapport.
That was so fire. So here's what the question I've got now for you. That was amazing. Does that work mostly on people that you don't know? Like, for instance, let's say you want to be a better communicator with a parent or a partner.
You use this for everything because it's situation focused, right? Think about how many conversations you have about Tom, about how many different things. You know Tom as a person, but your conversations or when you disagree with something, they fluctuate, do they not? So these techniques you can use pending on the circumstance. So if Tom says something to you that you may not like, but you're trying to get him to connect with you on a certain topic, you want him to go with you on a specific topic, then you would accept his position. Even if you're like, I think that's crazy, I think you're bonkers, I don't agree with you, I think that this is, you don't want to say this is a horrible idea, this is a bad idea. You want to allow at least that person to say it and accept that that is what they think for this situation. You can use it on a person if you're thinking about trying to create trust between people, but then also creating trust within a situation. This is where, this is communication, premier communication.
I freaking love that. Because initially when you were actually saying it, I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I can actually see that when you're meeting someone for the first time. But having you reset it as like, well, what if it's Tom, makes complete sense. Like, I freaking love that stuff because I'm always trying to get there, right? Like, been together for 20 years, but there's always room. So what are the ways in order to communicate? And you breaking that down was amazing.
It has to be because you want to do it, so to speak. And I think the biggest hurdle is that people are not willing to accept another person. They're not willing to accept that other person's views. And we have this, I'm right, you're wrong, and that destroys rapport. Destroys rapport. And it's not about that. Acceptance is, I accept your view. So if I would interview someone who raped someone, I would just accept what they were saying. Or I may ask them, what did you do last night? And they may want to tell me about how they just started taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't care if you're taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but for whatever reason, I have to shift and adapt and let you take me on that journey because now you feel heard. And because you feel heard, you start to do what? Connect with me, trust me, have faith in me. These are the building blocks to creating rapport, but you maintain this from beginning, middle to end. You don't drop it. And
you say you don't drop it in the conversation, or you're saying in totality in life? So like
in the conversation.
Right.
In the conversation. And it's ping pong. It's a mutual understanding between two people of what is being discussed. It is not a monologue. So if you're the only one speaking, that is not rapport. Right? It's I go, you go. I go, you go.
You've literally shattered my whole belief on what rapport is. I definitely thought rapport was like when you first meet someone, like, oh my God, like when I first met you, which what a absolute like disaster in hindsight. But when I first met you, I read, oh my God, Evy Poumpouras, she's Greek. Miloi Linika, guess, Milas Linika. So I was basically saying, I speak Greek and she speaks Greek. This is going to be amazing. The first minute I meet you, I'm going to build rapport with you and I'm going to show that we have something in common. That's what I thought rapport was.
Thank you.
Yeah, so digamnis.
Kalasi.
Very good, thank you. My fellow Greek in the house.
Yes, we are busting out the Greek.
We are. I'm so excited that you're on here. I've been waiting for you to come on. So excited about what you've done.
That was what you just said. You were trying to create common ground with me.
Yeah.
And look, could that fall under the rapport? Yes. But that's really about creating common ground. Oh, you're Greek? I'm Greek. No kidding. But I use that also when I would interview somebody, if I would go to the Middle East or if I would interview someone of Arab descent, I would speak in Arabic. Or my basic Arabic, my basic Arabic that I could, dialogue with people because I wanted to create a connection to find common ground. So is that a rapport building strategy? Yes, it is. But when you do these things, you have to be subtle about them. I always wanted people to comply, and I still do. You never want to force people to do anything. And so thinking about words that get people to comply rather than resist you. I also look at words in a strategic way in that I may not use certain words with certain people and situations. I'm always looking to soften words for people. Like, so if I'm, like, for example, if I want to say no to something, I will avoid giving a hard no, because sometimes no can affect somebody's identity. Because I'm not rejecting what you're asking. The interpretation can be you're rejecting me along with what I just asked you. And that can hurt a relationship. So I'll find different ways to say no. You know what, let me think about that. I'm not sure. Let me talk to so-and-so about it. I don't know if that's in my space. Let me come back to you later. I'll find different ways, or, you know, I don't know about that right now, but maybe later. I don't know if I'm in that space right now. So in that way, language is powerful if you can think about ways to communicate with people. So, because I feel like we're so much in this space where people like say no and stand your ground, which you should, but also think about when you say no, does it make somebody feel like shit? And so can you say no in a nicer way? And I don't mean in very extreme situations. I mean in just dialogue. Sometimes you don't think about the way you deliver it and think about how your words will land on that person. And I think for me, it's understand the person across from you. Number one, who are you speaking to? Who is that person? Understand them. Then when you can understand them, then you can figure out, how do I speak to this person because of who they are?
Yeah, that's very valid. So now, with that enlightenment, which is amazing, how do you then, because you even said like being softer, using softer language. So what are those like things that people can do? How do you define words? Because like,
well, what do we want? I'm always about mission oriented. Like,
so
that's
what's
my
the
thing.
goal?
What is my goal? So if I'm trying to get somebody to comply with something, how am I going to do that? Or am I trying to shut somebody down? Like if we bring back the no example, and maybe this is someone who's got, maybe I know is very identity, or they have a big ego, or they are narcissistic, or it may not land well, I will soften that blow, especially if it's somebody that maybe I want to work with. But if I were going to do that, I would use words that they wouldn't find or think were an attack on their identity or their ego. So I wouldn't say no. I'd say, you know, I'm not sure. Let me really think about this. No, you know, your words don't have to be harsh to land on someone.
Yeah.
Can you say no and have compassion? Can you say no and be kind or be professional? You can. So this is where I kind of push back to like, you tell them no. Okay, good luck with your, good luck with all of it.
I used to only just say no outright when I felt weak and insecure that I wouldn't stick to my no.
Isn't that interesting? So you were saying that no for yourself more than for them.
Yeah. Like, oh shit, I may back out on this, so just say no, like be firm. And then I realized it was more for myself. It was more because I didn't have the strength to push back or to gently actually decline. Because there's an element of amount of confidence to be able to say to somebody, you know, thank you so much, but actually not right now. And not feel guilty about it after, not beat yourself up. Like, to me, I really had to work on that.
You can reject people. And even something like, for example, you were bringing up different types of words before when you brought up important. Another word that I really think about is I'm sorry. When I hear people say I'm sorry a lot, and it's in their language. And that is one of the most disempowering things you can do to yourself, is to constantly be apologizing when you speak. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I missed this. Oh, I'm sorry I'm not feeling well. Why do you have to be sorry? I'm late, there was traffic. Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for your patience. So in that sense, language can also diminish you. And there are some people who their language is littered with I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And I think when you use that language, when it lands on that person, it lands in a negative way for you. Apologize when you need to. So like when you say it's important, you drop that word when it is important. So if you're gonna say I'm sorry, drop it. When you are truly sorry, don't throw it out there like it's nothing. One, you devalue the word. So then when you do say I'm sorry, nobody believes it anyway because you say it no matter what. And then two, I think it diminishes you because you're apologizing. You're in this constant state of apology to other people. I was taught words. I didn't really put this much thought into words until I began doing interviews and interrogations. People can have a visceral reaction to words, and sometimes not in a good way. For example, people would lie to me all the time in the interview room. I knew it was going to happen. But when I wanted to say to someone, when I wanted to not call them out on it, but bring it up, I would not say, you're a liar. You're lying to me. It sounds ugly. I would say you're not being truthful. I know you're holding back on something. There's a different sentiment to those things because if I call somebody a liar is an ugly word. Nobody likes to be called a liar. They're going to shut down on me, but I want to keep the conversation going. I want progress. I want cooperation, so I'm going to use different words. Or maybe let's take something like steal. Did you steal that money? Ooh, steal's ugly. Nobody wants to be a thief. Did you take that money? Oh, sounds different. And so this is where you can think about language. Now, if I had somebody in the room who was completely avoidant, meaning like they're ignoring me, I'm not even here, they don't want to speak to me, they're doing one of these, and they're completely disconnected, I might call them a liar just to evoke something out of them. In that situation, because I need to get them to turn around and get them fired up, I'd be like, you're a liar. And I was like, what? I don't care, I got you talking. And so sometimes we may do that with people who are shut down on us. We may provoke them with our words because we want to get a reaction out of them. That's when you see people kind of drop bombs with their words. You can do it, you'll get a reaction, but at the same time, you're going to cause some damage after the fact. But if you're looking to try to wake up and get that person fired up because they're completely indifferent, drop a few words. That'll definitely do that. So this is just how words can land on people. They can be powerful. They can cause a reaction. They can shut people down. They can create a more open conversation. It's just navigating, what do I want? Who is this person? What do they mean to me? Or what do they not mean to me?
How you present yourself is important. But it's interesting because when I thought about dress more, probably in my professional career, we were kind of taught to dress in the way we wanted someone to interpret us or to receive us. Actually, in the service, there was an informal dress code where you were only allowed to wear, on the president's detail, dark suits. So you could wear a black, navy, or gray, no other colors. Your shirt underneath was white, or you could wear maybe a light blue. And so the idea, the concept was that you are to exude seriousness. You are to exude severity. You are to exude, don't mess with me. Today is not the day. I am not the person. The Secret Service signature design, which you see, everybody sees the dark suit and the glasses, it's actually not by mistake. It was created, manufactured to exude a message. And then I began to utilize that as well when I did interviews. I would interview a lot of men, so I'd always wear heels in the interview room.
When you say interviews, you mean interrogations?
Interrogations, yes. And when I did my interrogations, I would interview very hardened people, most of whom tended to be male. I would wear heels to kind of elevate myself. I would, again, wear dark colors. I never wore skirts, ever. I always wore pants. Even to this day, I think I feel the most powerful when I wear pants. That's maybe that's my secret superpower. Although today I tried to go a little bit different because I do try to embrace the feminine part of who I am. But pants, you put me in a pair of slacks, I can talk to anybody. And I usually will wear them if I'm meeting with a group of men or I'm going to an important meeting, I will wear the pants. It's just I'm gonna roll in like you dudes. And so that's kind of the way I've always thought about presentation. And there are moments where I do try to dress for myself and how I feel, what I like, but I've always had more of the, what am I trying to exude to the world or to the person listening? If you're trying to connect with children, teachers, brighter clothes makes you more approachable, makes you more engaging. But I've always actually probably if you open my wardrobe, everything's black, white, and beige. I've been very neutral. I know somebody's trying to get me to wear pink. I'm not going to say who. It's because of the way it's like, use your outfit to convey a message.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And there's so many little nuances here, because when we're talking about this, I dress to give myself an emotion and a feeling in order to show up for where I am. So let's say, you know, with this, I really, you know, episode on confidence, you know, I'm sitting with freaking Evy Poumpouras, like I'm going to show up and be my full confident self. So I put on the watch, I put on the boots, but that's really for me to feel a certain way in coming here. But for you, actually, it's not the opposite, but you're trying to get me to feel a certain way about you. Is that right?
Yes. Or also maybe I don't want my outfit to distract you. I don't want my outfit to make you think I'm not serious. But in what you're saying though, so with my previous job, you know, I had to wear dark suits, and I remember sometimes the other female agents, I remember one of the things we needed to look for was loop belts, a belt line that had loops, because we had gear to wear. And it was one of the hardest things to find suits, women's suits, that looked good with belt loops. This was like the bane of my existence when I was an agent. It was really hard. And I remember asking a couple of female agents, they're like, oh, just go to Joseph Banks. I was like, Joseph Banks, the men's suit store? Oh yeah, just, you know, get one from there. I was like, oh no. No. If I have to wear a suit, I'm still gonna look my best so I can feel my best. Kind of what you're saying, so I could feel confident. And I would find these nice tailored suits. And then in addition to that, hair and makeup. When I worked the morning shift at the White House, I had to be there at 5 a.m. And so that means I had to be ready, dressed, and you know, at the house. I would wake up early to do my hair and makeup. I was like, I still want to feel good about myself. And I remember one morning, it was like super early, one of the female agents walked in, and we were in what they call the down room. And I had my makeup done, my hair done. And she said, I'll never forget, she said, why do you bother? Almost as if I'd done something wrong. Like, why do you bother? And I looked at her and I was like, why not bother? I was like, I'm in the White House. I was like, I can't think of a better place to look my best. I was like, I might die today, where if I'm gonna go down, I wanna look my best. And it stayed with me, and I bothered because it made me feel good. So it's like, yeah, I gotta wear the suit, I gotta wear the flat shoes, but I'm still gonna look my best so I can feel my best. Because I felt good. I never rolled into work without any makeup on, ever. That was like, I'm keeping that part of myself. That was for me, that was my part. And thankfully, I went all those years, nobody really pushed back on me, but it made me feel stronger and better. Even when I went through the NYPD Academy, I don't know how it is now, but when I went through, they were like, no makeup. And it was really hard. And so I would like try to sneak on a little concealer under my eyes or try to do something, because I was really getting beat up when I went into the New York City Police Academy. I didn't know what to expect. It was a world I didn't know. I knew I wanted to help people and serve. But it's a very paramilitary organization I didn't understand. And I would constantly get in trouble for like makeup. And I remember one day, like I put on mascara. I was like really done. It was like hard. It was in the beginning for me because it's just a world I didn't know. And like the instructor, because she knew me because I was notorious for breaking these rules. And I would be punished by doing push-ups. And I remember she came over and she's just like, Papadoukas, which is not my last name. And she just came like right up here and she just touched. I remember her going like this to my eyes. Are you wearing makeup? And I was just like, yes, I am. And, you know, and she was pissed. And I ended up having to do push-ups. And so every day was a test, like how can I put a little bit more on but not get caught? It built up my confidence because I needed to bring a part of myself.
So that's interesting. Actually, I have a question for you as you were talking. You are always looking just freaking sharp, girl. Like your hair, your makeup, your outfits. How are you making sure that you don't solely identify as that and get paralyzed to make sure that you always look a certain way? Like I really feel that for myself in the sense of I love jewelry, I love showing up, but I never want to get trapped there. Like I want to dress how I actually want to feel. And on some days, if I want to just have no makeup on, I don't want to be paralyzed to being like, oh my God, but that's not my identity. Lisa needs all the braids. Lisa needs the thing. And I'm always very aware of that. Are you, like, do you have any type of thing where you're making sure you're not holding your identity to always looking amazing?
No, because of those jobs, because they were so severe and so extreme, that's why I pushed back a little bit to hold a bit of myself. Also, women typically, at that time, I think it's shifting, they were seen as very masculine. In a way to survive, you would dress like the guys, talk like the guys, behave like the guys. And it's like, who are you now? And it's like, so I have to become a man and look like a man and sound like a man so that I could be good at my job? Fuck no. So, but I didn't make that my identity. So there's plenty of times when you and I have Zoomed where I've got no makeup on, I'm home, I'm in my sweats. I don't really sit and think about it. And there's moments where, yes, do I want to look nice or try to look nice? You know, sometimes it's hit or miss, you do your best. But I don't live in that. When I work out, because I work out outside, I run outside, my husband actually literally makes fun of me. I work out in the cold, in the elements. My sweatpants are ripped and they have holes in them. My sweatshirt has holes in them. And he's like, he says to me, he's like, how you don't come home with like people giving you money thinking you're homeless? He's like, I don't know. In that moment though, I don't care about what I look like truly when I'm outside running in the elements. I look unrecognizable. I'm a beast in that mode. I'm focused on my workout. I'm not focused on what I look like. So I'm not rigid. I'm not one thing. I flow. All right, today I got dressed up nice for you, hopefully, right? I want to present my best self. When I work out, if it's hardcore, I'm focused on my workout, not what I look like, because that's going to take away from my workout. So I guess I flow in what I'm trying to do. Is it functional? Does it work? We shift and adapt to how we're feeling in that moment to what we're doing, or maybe what we're trying to feel. Which is, with you, your element is like, this is who I am, this is what I feel. Like, I can't imagine you in anything other than what you wear now.
Which is interesting, because that's the thing, like, when I remember this clear as day. My mum, oh God, I must have been maybe 16 at the time. And my mum asked me like, oh, I'm gonna go to the grocery store. Can you come with me to help or whatever? And I was like, I don't have makeup on. And she was like, okay, we were just going to the store. And I was like, Mum, I'm not leaving the house. Like, I wouldn't leave the house because I didn't have makeup on. I was that insecure. So even as we're talking about how to dress, it was like, now I'll post photos in my stories, especially me, no makeup, no braids. But there was a time where I was so insecure that I felt like my identity was only safe if I had makeup on, if I looked a certain way. And so I think that that's actually why I do what I do now, in that I force myself. I don't actually anymore, but when I first started, I forced myself post pictures without makeup because I know my personality and I know I can get obsessive. And so, like you said, I know I can get rigid, girl. I know I could be that person if I let myself go back and spill into, oh, but what are people going to say about you? What are people going to think? Because it's just that natural part of me that I can't shut down. And so show everything, all the flaws, all the things that you don't want people to see, show it now so you never have to freaking worry, and you can always just show up to be naturally you in any way, shape or form. And I've leaned into it because I know I can spill over into worrying about what people think.
And I remember even working with the first ladies, and I can share this because I shared this story in my book with the former first lady, Mrs. Obama, when I had her. I mean, she had a routine every morning, and I would really see her give love to herself, and that she would wake up very early every morning, do her workout. She had her routine, and she would get ready with her team, her hair person, her makeup person, regardless about politics. That doesn't play a role here. I saw how much time she invested in herself. I respected that, and I learned from that. I would see the thoughtfulness that went into getting ready, getting dressed, going out to the world, the respect you give to yourself when you do that. Because it's really about, I'm giving myself the respect. I'm investing in me. And I kind of like always thought of it that way. I respect myself. I love myself. What does that do to my confidence? Pretty boosts it up.
Were they okay with you being a police officer?
Oh, no.
So how did you handle that then?
I did it anyway.
Break it down. You said, I'm going to go to the police force. And they're like, what are you doing?
They stopped speaking to me.
For how long?
The whole time I was in the academy.
What?
Yeah.
So, So
it hurt, but I knew I was doing something good. If I sat there and I thought about everything that everybody said, I'll do this. I did a checklist. Am I hurting anybody? No. And I'm trying to do something good. Yes. Do I want to serve? Yes. Can I provide for myself? Yes. I did all the checks. Can I live with this choice? Yes. Can I live with not doing this? No. That's it. Really, I simplified it. Sometimes it just is what it is. And I was like, I can't do this for anybody else. This is the job I'm going to do. This is the job I'm going to wake up every day to get up to go to work. They didn't understand it. They came from a culture where the women were not in law enforcement. I had nobody in my family in law enforcement at all. But I had a draw to it, a pull to it, because I really wanted to make an impact in a different way and help people. To some extent, I marched to the beat of my own drum. I've always listened to my inner voice, and if it's not, I can't do something for somebody else. I just can't, so long as I'm not hurting anyone and harming anybody. But just because somebody thinks something doesn't mean I have to follow it. I always ask myself two questions when I struggle with something. I say, who is this person and why should I listen to them? So if you bring me back to this example with my parents, right? In fact, my mom used to lie to everybody when they're like, oh, what does your daughter do now? Because I just graduated college. She would tell them she's a secretary in Manhattan. She's got a really great secretary job.
Oh, really?
She would lie to everybody.
Did that bother you?
I thought it was funny. I thought it was, I understood. This is a woman who grew up in a village. I had that ability to understand the perspective. But I was like, I'm not going to not do this because you think it's crazy.
But most people stop there, though. That's my point.
That's on them. Then you don't do it, and then you spend the rest of your life bitching and moaning about how your parents did you wrong. That's on you. There's an expiration date for how long you can blame somebody else for the dreams you didn't achieve. At the end of the day, when you become an adult, that is your choice. So I hear you, but I'm very adamant about this because when I hear this, it's like you chose. I chose. I lived in a household because at the time I lived with my parents. They did not speak to me. They ignored me. They would nothing. I did it anyway. And you know what? They came around and everything was okay. My purpose in life is not to convince everybody, but please, I need your permission. I would like to do this. Please give me your permission. I will do nothing. I will do nothing. I will accomplish nothing. I'm here to make my own choices, right or wrong, and I do the best job and I do them to the best of my ability. But I am not here to make choices to make the rest of the world happy. Do no harm, but live your life.
Fuck yeah, look, girl, I'm so with you. Like, I love your intensity so much. I think that's one of the reasons we get along so well, because I have the same mentality. The only thing that I have is absolute crippling negative voice as I'm doing it all. So I won't stop. I won't let other people dictate what I do. I may give reasons, but I don't abide by other people's rules about my own life. Fuck that shit, never. But every step of the way, I have the negative voice. It was like, oh my God, you're not going to be liked. Oh my God, what are you doing? Oh my God, that person's not going to like you. I just don't let it affect how I show up.
Look, with those two questions I was telling you, who is this person, why should I listen to them? So if we bring it back to my parents, right? If we bring it back to my mom, who is this person? This is my mother. She grew up in poverty. She grew up in a village where they were just trying to survive. There was 5, 6 people living in one little room, a quarter of the size of the rug that we're on. She had a different mindset, a different upbringing. She was just trying to get to the next day. And when they came to America, again, it was the same thing. It was just survival. This was beyond what she thought was capable. But that's who this person is. I understand that. Now, why should I listen to her? Because she's my mom? What experience or expertise does my mother have to give me advice on this specific thing? She did not. She could not. She didn't know what it was like to be a police officer. She didn't even understand what I was doing. Even when I put in for the Secret Service, she's like, oh, what is that? I worked as a Secret Service agent for years and she didn't understand. And I was armed. I had a weapon. She's like, yeah, but you don't really use it because I would dress in civilian clothes. And so I didn't tell her I went out and I did arrests or search warrants or interrogated criminals. She could not understand that. So when you ask those two questions, that helps me at least assess why I should listen to a person. Who is this person? Are they a relevant human being in my life? So my mom's a relevant human being in my life. But why should I listen to them? maybe not something I should listen to her about because she has no knowledge about this.
It's so freaking strong. And for me, that's exactly why I got to that place that you're talking about as an adult, right? Like understanding where my dad come from, because we've spoken a lot about the fact that both our parents came from villages with holes in the floor as their toilets. That's how, you know, impoverished our parents have come from. I love what you're saying. It took me a while to get there. I didn't think like that, which is why when my dad first said that, I was very upset because I saw my dad as a voice of authority. And it's interesting because I never thought about it until you were just breaking it down. I was like, why would I listen to my dad? Like, why was my inclination to listen to my dad every time? Is because he was a very dominant voice in my life of authority. And so out of habit, it became oh, if your dad says this, then that must be true. And that was one of the moments where I actually went against his wishes or went against him very deliberately. And in that moment, it's like, I really want my dad to be proud of me, but how can I be proud of myself if I don't follow my own heart? And I hate to freaking say it, and it's heartbreaking to ever think, you know, and obviously you've lost your father. But I do think about that my parents aren't going to be around forever, that when you think about your family or your extended family, they aren't going to be there in day to day, let alone for the rest of your life. So what happens when that happens, when you've lost touch with someone or that someone passes away? Who are you living your life for then? And that really freaking hit me, girl, where it's like, it doesn't mean that I don't love someone. It doesn't mean that I don't respect them. It doesn't mean that if someone gives me an opinion that I don't agree with, that I still don't respect them or have, you know, intense feelings for them. I do, but I don't have to listen to them.
Well, I guess I kind of look at it this way with your scenario. Who has to wake up every morning, roll over, and look at Tom? You or Dad? You do. I think sometimes it's just that simple. Your family members can have good intent for you. There's nothing malicious in that. But you just have to understand when you should and shouldn't listen. Just because somebody is your family member and maybe they have good intent, that does not mean it's in harmony with who you are and your value system, and it does not mean that you're supposed to listen. It's not being defiant, it's just being I have to choose. So but look, I think in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty low-level thing when it comes to family. It's just being like, this is my mom, this is how she is, this is my dad, this is who they are, they mean no harm, they do their best. You accept them as they are rather than fighting them. I didn't waste my time fighting with my parents trying to convince them.
Oh.
I had no energy. I'm going to the police academy. I was getting my ass kicked every day. I was going to get kicked out if I didn't make the cut. I had to be focused. So I didn't have the time. I didn't have the freedom. I didn't have that. I was going to miss this opportunity. When I went to Secret Service training, same thing. I could not be distracted by them.
Actually, that's interesting. Did their belief that you shouldn't be doing it have an impact of how you showed up at the police force? Was there any internal thing that was like, I'm going to prove it? Like, did it help you on your mission?
Probably. I think whenever I've gotten pushback or hate, or like when people are like, you can't do that, I think there's a saying, I'm completely going to butcher it, but I really like it. It's like, I can't quit now. I've got a whole bunch of motherfuckers to prove wrong.
I love that.
I always think of that thing, but I do it for myself. Yes, people can give you drive, I think, but I never, look, don't get me wrong, it was hard. It's hard, sure, it hurts your soul, it makes you sad. Like, I wasn't just like, you're happy coming home. It was hard. I'm coming in the house, nobody wants to talk to me, everyone's ignoring me, everyone thinks I'm nuts. You get tired of that. But I knew it was temporary. And I knew they would get over it. I think the harder hate is when you get real hate from people, because that is something I've experienced is getting hate from folks, people, friends, or people you know, where it's like very cruel hate or mean hate, people that can become bullies to you. I've seen that perspective. I've actually dealt with that, and having people kind of come at me that way, that has been a bit hard, because I've always been very like mindful. I have to kind of monitor who's in my neighborhood or who I have in my circle. And over the years, I truly have had slowly like to kind of filter people out and push people in. I didn't always make the best choices with having people around me, or the people I had around me maybe turned into not so good people. Sometimes when people give you hate, it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. But I always ask myself, if somebody says something to me, is there any truth to what they're saying? And if there isn't, or if I see this chaos, this volatility, this cruelness, because I have been the recipient of very cruel words and hatred. I usually, my default is like, I've had to like literally cut people out of my life. I haven't done it a lot, but I feel like once you cause me harm or once you do that, there's nothing I can do. If somebody's capable of giving hate and cruelness, I'm not that person. I've never been that person. So once I hear that meanness, that hate, it's at that point, it's like, I can't be around you.
Do you have any like process? Because as you were talking, I was like, oh, that's interesting how we have almost different stages of cutting people out. It's like, oh, I'm just going to accept this person for who they are because I love them. And so they're going to hate or have, let's say, doubt or negative thoughts about what I'm going to do. But I love them, so I'm going to keep them in my life. Option number 2 is I really love them, but I can't have them in my life on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to engage with them Christmas and Easter. And then the third tier is, yeah, I can never speak to this person again because they are absolutely bad for my self-esteem, my mental state, and so I'm cutting them out completely. Do you ever then take someone and go, which bucket are they going to go in? Because as you were talking, I was like, I think I do that.
I don't think of it as buckets, but it's really interesting. Like, you always try to find the good in people, but I also, because I know human nature, just because you try to find the good in somebody doesn't mean that they're always operating on that level. You know, I think we all have good and bad, and most of us try to keep the good up here, but sometimes the bad prevails. But the thing is, these people don't know that they're doing that. They think that I'm right to do this, I'm right to unleash on you. And then maybe because some people perceive me as being a strong person, they bring out the heavy if they want to like say something to me. I haven't had that often in cutting people out, but I've probably done it on 1 or 2 occasions, definitely 1 occasion or 2, maybe 2, where I'm like, probably 2, where somebody was tethered to me in some way, and I'm like, this person is not a good person. I've completely pushed them out. I'm happy to give love. I've got love, but I got no time for hate. I'm going to share a story with you. I've not shared this story with anyone else, but I will share it with everyone. And it's one of those moments where I was upset with myself. It doesn't happen a lot, but I was really upset with myself. I was asked to do a TED Talk pretty much almost like right after I left the service. And they're like, hey, do you want to give a TED Talk? A TEDx, excuse me. I want to make sure I say it. TEDx. And I said, sure, great. Let me do it on words, powerful weapon. I based it off of my background doing interviews. But there's this like little voice in the back of my head. And it was, Evy, who are you to get up on that stage and give a TED Talk? Like, there's other agents out there that are more senior to you, that have more experience than you, that have more knowledge than you. To my knowledge, at that point, no former agent had ever gone on stage to do that. And I was worried about what other people would think rather than focusing on my TEDx. And I got up stage. I did okay. It's okay. You guys can Google it. You can watch it. It's okay. But I didn't own it because I was more concerned with being on stage. This is online. I'd never done anything online before. It lives forever. What are my former colleagues going to think about what I'm doing? They're going to be like, who does she think she is to get up on that stage? This guy has more experience. That guy has more experience. Sure, is there somebody with more time, more experience? There's always going to be. But this is the opportunity that was given to me based off of my experience and my expertise. And I didn't own it, Lisa. I did all right. I didn't give it my all. And to this day, I regret it. And after that, I was like, you know, I had this one chance, this one opportunity, and I blew it. And this is the one true time where I could say the imposter syndrome came in, where I was like, you know, why am I on this stage? I shouldn't be here. And I'm mad at myself to this day because I didn't get up there. I didn't own it. I didn't project my voice. I didn't ruin it, but it just could have owned the moment, and I didn't own the moment because I was worried about what other people would think of me, more so what my former colleagues would think of me.
So explain to me then, because in the last segment, you literally, with your parents and stuff, you said, I'm not going to let them dictate what I'm going to do, what people think of you. What's the difference then between that and this?
Because this was public.
Like
you're online.
Okay.
You're on stage. There's hundreds of people there. Never done anything like that before. So now you're getting into a different space, a different environment. It's you. I don't know what it was, and it's fair. It's like jumping in front of a bullet, no problem.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's, yeah.
It was just different. It was different, but it's also exposure. it was very difficult for me to wrap my mind around, but I knew I would have hate out there somewhere. But I also just allowed that to get in here. Right? Like, oh, who is she? Who, you know, I don't know if you've ever felt that way where people are like, who's Lisa Bilyeu to have like to be out there speaking?
Oh, yes. All the time. I mean, I just literally had it like a few months ago where someone reached out, a wonderful literary agent reached out and was like, you know, to Tom actually, and was like, would Lisa be interested in writing a book? And Tom comes up to me and he's like, babe, I just got a text, they reached out, are you interested in writing a book? I was like, oh, that's nice. And I just literally went back to work and he's just standing, he's like, babe, did you just hear what I said? Like you got offered, like someone wants to offer you a book? And I was like, no, that's great. That's very sweet. And he's like, why are you being so nonchalant? And I was like, but like, who would buy a book from me? And he literally looked at me, he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I kind of, at the moment, I was like, wow, that's so not my mentality. Like that, you know me, that I don't think like that. I'm like, okay, be as good as you possibly can be. Work fucking hard. Show up every day to be the best person. Keep learning every day. You're gonna get better. That's my attitude. And this negative, it didn't even dawn on me that I had already dismissed myself. And I was like, wow, that part of me still exists. And it was actually very powerful because I was like, Lisa, that's the old negative self-talk. Because even though it's still very real, like it's still very real in me, it's like, but it hasn't stopped you before. And also thinking like that, does it serve you? Yes or no? Like, does that mindset serve your goal or not serve your goal? It doesn't serve me. My goal is to impact people. So thinking that I'm incapable of writing a book that anyone would buy doesn't serve my goal. So in that moment, I was like, wow, give myself grace for having the negative thought, give myself grace for still having that part of me that is still that 14-year-old girl that thinks negative thoughts about her. Give myself grace, but immediately fucking kick myself in the ass and get back up and don't take that shit from anyone, especially yourself.
For the most part, my inner critic, I've silenced them in a sense, but there's moments, especially in this career, that I'm not familiar with where I don't know, but I'll try to reach out to get information from people. If I'm questioning something, I'll bounce my issues off of someone else. Or I'll have that moment, am I just being insecure and not seeing this the right way? Or is this, a real legitimate thing?
Yeah. Like, I do the same. Is this the young, insecure Lisa that's just showing up again? Or is this actually something that I need to pay attention to? Because that's also another thing, is that the inner critic, like to me, shouldn't always be silenced. The inner critic sometimes is warning you or telling you something. And so like I've said before, my inner critic or the negative voice is my best mate because I can't stop the inner critic. I can't stop the negative voice. So I just go, okay, instead of stopping it, what if it was my friend? What if it's trying to tell me something? What are you trying to tell me, friend? And literally sometimes it will tell me something, I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. I was about to go in that meeting unprepared and that negative voice saying you're not good enough, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh shit, it's right, I need to go research. So it's actually served me once I'm able to distance my emotions from it. So taking away the emotion, what is it trying to tell me? Sometimes it's not trying to tell me anything. It's just the echo of the 14-year-old insecure Lisa. And in those moments I go, oh, okay, it's just the echo, don't listen to it. So I'm able to kind of take it and then assess if it's something that's powerful or if it's just that part of me that I haven't been able to quiet.
It's really important to be aware of that inner critic and really not allow that to actually make a home in your head. I get it that it's going to surface, but they can be like a guest who shows up from time to time, but they can't be that guest who never leaves.
Right? It can't be my partner, it can be my friend.
Yes, or even a far acquaintance. But it's really important when it comes to how you hold yourself back. When I was working on my book, I interviewed an individual who is part of the training process for special ops, military special ops. And this is where this isn't just average military, this is high-end special operations, tactical. You're talking about the elite of the elite. And I asked this person who's part of that training design, I said, how do you take the average person and make them this warrior? And the the individual said to me, we don't. The average person doesn't apply. Only the people who truly believe that they can do this, only those people apply. So before we've even had a chance to select anybody out, people self-select.
It's purely your belief system.
It's purely, so those people who have doubt, who don't think they can, they've already self-selected out. And I've always been of the mindset, I want somebody else to tell me no. The first no will never come from me.
Oh.
No is like not, when I hear no, I don't hear no, I hear not yet. Remember this one story with my dad when he came to America. So my dad came to America, Greek immigrant, like very broken English, very ethnic looking. I look a certain way. My dad looks straight out of like the Middle East. He's very ethnic looking. So when he came to America, it was in Harlem. We lived in Washington Heights, Harlem area. He was trying to find a job, and he would go to different places, to different coffee shops and diners, and put in for a job, and nobody was hiring him. No. And then finally, he goes into this coffee shop in Harlem, and he says to the person, please, I need a job. And the person's like, no, I don't need anybody. And my brother, my dad was getting desperate at that time. He's like, no, please, I need a job. He's like, and the guy's like, no, thank you, I've got enough. And then kind of pushed, escorted my dad to the door. And then finally, my dad turned around and said to him, I will work for you for free. I will work for you for free. He's like, just try me out. Let me work for 2 weeks. Try me out. You pay me nothing. Pay me nothing. If I'm good, you keep me. If I'm no good, then I can at least say I have experience. So when I go look for a job. And I always remember that story and how he pushed back, because all he heard was no. And so when I hear no, I hear not yet. So he ends up, so he says it to the man. The man kind of just like throws his hands up in the air. And my dad's kind of standing there defeated. And my dad's like, I'll take trash out. I'll clean up. I'll do whatever you want me to do. So the guy leaves. And my dad's thinking it's over. And he goes to go out. The guy comes out with a mop. And he's like, here, go ahead. Dumpster's in the back. And so he began working his first job in America for free. And he did. He worked for free for about 2 weeks. And then he was eventually offered a job. So I always think of like that determination of I have to find work, and to deal with that rejection and that inner critic, that defeated part of yourself, to think horrible things about yourself. And I guess you find a way to kind of dismiss that inner critic,
Yeah, that's so powerful. There is something so beautiful about proving yourself. And it actually made me think about how when we started Quest and we were building it, I didn't have any experience whatsoever. And as we were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, I was very insecure about me running a division. I was like, I don't freaking know what I'm doing. Like, if I had like 40 employees after 2 years, we grew so quickly, I had 40 employees underneath me. I was like, I've never been a boss before. I don't know how to, I just learned on the job. And so over time, it was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I can get better. I can learn. And in that process, as I went from that to building our studio, our film studio at Quest, the insecure Lisa comes back, right? Okay, now I've finally got back into television. I've got a studio, I'm building it, but I'm hiring these people with more experience than I have. And so as I'm hiring these people with more experience, I start to feel less qualified for the job. I took the role originally, I was just helping out. Remember, I'm just helping my husband. So I built the shipping department with no real title. I was like, I'm just building this to help the company. And then when I transitioned over to, okay, now we were financially, the company was getting successful. We were doing content at Quest. So I started to build out the studio. So going over to build out the studio, I needed the title. So I was like the head of studio. And so I was like, okay, that feels really good. I love this title. It's studio related, which goes back to my roots. I've worked my ass off. I've paid my dues. Now I'm here. I want to be seen as the head of the studio. But over time, I was like, I'm hiring these people that are more experienced than I am. And I'm like, crap. Like, are people going to think that I have this job because I own the company? I didn't like that feeling, because I'm like, but that's terrible. You should only have something because you're qualified to do it, whether you're the fucking owner of the company or not. So I turned around to Tom, out of my own insecurities, I turned around to Tom and I pulled him aside one day and I was like, babe, if ever you don't think, because he's the president of the company, so again, I very much respect roles and titles. If you ever don't think I'm performing at the level of my title, I want you to either demote me, fire me, or hire above me. And it was out of my own ego and confidence that I did it, because I never wanted to worry about whether I was doing a good enough job. And I used to beat myself up a lot, like, do better, what the fuck, Lisa, you're messing up. So I'd push myself and I couldn't actually see if I was doing a good job anymore. So I literally turned to him and I said that to him. And he looked at me and he's like, babe, you know, the goal in my life is to protect my family and provide for my family. He's like, so even if my wife is the one getting in the way, don't worry, I'll fire you or I tell you you're fucking up, because you're not going to get in the way of me providing for you. It was actually a very sweet moment, but I needed to say that out loud. I needed to for my own sake.
But this is where I think that inner critic voice can take away from us, because rather than, and it reminds me a bit of my TEDx example that I gave you, rather than you just focusing on your job and putting your energy and just doing great and enjoying it and focusing it, there was a part of you that was distracted because you were worried that you didn't belong there, you didn't this, you didn't that. And so now all the energy, all that cognitive load, which is limited, and all that emotional energy that you have, because it's finite, rather than you just focusing on what you need to do, it was pulling you this way.
You're so right.
So okay, so I'm gonna give you an example of it. When I began to surf, to learn how to surf, which I'm not very good, I just want to put that out there. I do it because I love it. I love, you know, the movement and I love the ocean. But when I began to surf, I took lessons in Long Island, in New York, which is a very rough surf. It's not like the Hawaii surf, which is nice. And I began learning to surf during the month where there's a lot of waves. I remember that waves, they told us, so like, hey, this is a rough month, this is a rough time to learn. I was like, all right, that's fine. So the instructor takes us all out on our long boards out by the coast, and this was the Rockaway Beach, Rockaway's Long Beach in New York and Long Island. And so he says, okay, guys, he shows us the moves, and he says, start practicing your surf. And he's like, but just by the way, he's like, there's some rocks here, and there were rocks there. He's like, just stay away from the rocks. Don't let the current pull you into the rocks, right? So he shows us the moves, and we start surfing. So the whole time I'm surfing, it's like I'm being pulled to the rocks, And I swear I spent probably a solid hour just paddling away from the rocks. I paddle away, I get pulled, and I'm exhausted. Paddling is the hardest part of surfing, and in the waves, it was hard. And I just kept going and going, and I'm getting frustrated, and I'm thinking, this sucks. What was I thinking? So the surf instructor finally comes over. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, I told you to stay away from the rocks. I was like, yes, I'm trying to stay away from them. They're right there. You told me to stay away from them. They keep getting pulled in. And he's like, that's because you keep looking at the rocks. He's like, where are you trying to go? I said, the beach. He's like, so why don't you just focus on the beach? He's like, forget the rocks are even there. And so sure as shit, I get up on my board, I push the rocks aside in my head, and I look at the beach. And he told me, he's like, where you focus is where your board is going to go. And as soon as I did that, guess where my board went? That way. But because I was so focused on the rocks, my board was going to the rocks. So all I have to say is focus on where you want to go, because you don't have the bandwidth to waste it on anything else.
If you want to learn how to spot a manipulator, a con man, or a psychopath, then click here right now.
When you put the 4 of those things together, you kind of create the perfect concoction for a con man to step in, and they leave you high and dry, broke, alone,